Hey Skyfarers, and welcome to Aethercast, the Kharadron Overlords podcast. I'm Lee, the Arcanite Admiral, and I'm joined by a couple of other great admirals today to talk to you all about Fyreslayers. So let's introduce those admirals. We have our newly promoted and birthday boy, Duardin Max.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Happy birthday for yesterday.
For yesterday, yeah. Thank you so much.
It's your birthday show, effectively.
Yes. So it's always a good way to start the year with a birthday.
And I didn't realise until a couple of days ago, but it's effectively the birthday of the new Battletome as well.
Yes, 8th of January was when both Zinch and KO were released. So that was a surprise. Yeah, I didn't expect it that early in January.
So you share your birthday with KO, effectively.
Yep, and Elvis Presley. So.
And Elvis Presley. Very cool.
And apparently Peter Atkinson from Australia.
Oh, okay. A couple.
Wait, there's two people that have the same birthday? That's crazy.
Yeah.
KO actually has two birthdays. It's like the Queen, because it has the initial release and the second Battletome. And lastly but not least, we have joining us for his second time on the show, Mr. Matthew Barker. Welcome, sir.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back. Thank you for having me on. Glad I didn't embarrass myself the first time enough to not come on a second.
No, you were very good, and we're glad to have you back.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So before we get into the main show, is there any news?
Yes, there's news that we will indeed get an FAQ this month.
Confirmed.
It has been said in a community article for the 40k FAQ that Age of Sigmar players will have to wait a little longer, but later this month. So the 31st of January will be the date.
Who started that nasty, dirty little rumor that there might not be an FAQ at all?
Yeah, I was doubting if we had one.
No, but like they put out like a sort of a calendar. What was it, like maybe 2 years ago, where they said they committed to putting out an FAQ and an errata 2 weeks after a Battletome, roughly, and then or the General's Handbook, and then one in the winter and one in the summer, probably to go along with the General's Handbook. So, if they're gonna sort of make that commitment, I'm gonna trust them that they're not gonna fall back on that.
Yeah, I mean, last year was different for obvious reasons, so you never know. And then, I mean, what does their info from 2 years care? I mean, GW, they change mind every 2 months.
I'm wondering if they really do look at tournament data, or if they just base it off a lot of their in-house playtesters, or maybe some of their external playtesters that they have working with them. I've always been wondering about the sort of percentage of the information they're taking in and making those decisions on.
Well, they have a huge Excel sheet where they type in stuff, so that tells you all you need to know about balancing at GW. Like, guys, an Excel sheet, come on. What's going? I bet when they save that Excel sheet or they want to open it, it takes like half an hour because there's so much.
Me and Alex were discussing our just love affair with my. Sorry about that. Yeah.
I mean, I assume it's just some sort of formula they use for calculating points, but I mean, it can only go so far because it's not going to work on abilities, is it?
Yeah, they tried. There was an article in, I think, November, White Dwarf, where they explained a bit what they do and how it works and how they try to balance it. And they're already going deeper into like synergies, but I think it's hard to do. It's very hard to cover all the possible things, all the different variations you can do. So, I mean, it's not an easy job, but
I mean, and you have to think, right? You have to think they have what? Probably, I don't know, a couple dozen in the generous sense of internal playtesters, and then a couple dozen external playtesters that they really trust the opinions of. But then when they release a Battletome or an FAQ or some update out to the masses, you suddenly just get millions of playtesters that are highly critical and highly judgmental. And so whenever there's a mistake, or how could you not possibly see this combination, it's you have to give them a lot of leeway, because you suddenly have millions of players playing millions of games, and the rate at which you can discover discrepancies or loopholes or bad synergies that they didn't intend is pretty high. So I tend to really give them a lot of leeway. I know a lot of the internet doesn't, but that's the internet, right?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely not an easy job. What I wonder is if they listen or follow like social media. I mean, maybe not us, but the Honest Wargamer or Facehammer, and those groups who discuss the evident problems with armies. Or
yeah, you would have thought they would have discovered Warhammer Weekly by now.
Yeah, but
they definitely do. I don't think they're listening to the Honest Wargamer though.
Yeah, maybe not. But I know that they follow AOS Shorts, Dan Shorts, I think is his name.
Of course.
And well, they invited Alex Cron to write part of an article for the community site. So maybe they're looking. If you're watching, click like.
The other thing is those articles that they started doing, the MetaWatch articles, has been looking at tournament stats.
Yeah, so I think they're catching up. They're improving.
Yeah. So,
other news: the Seraphon Warband is got previewed for pre-release, right?
Yes, and it appears we have already seen the exciting models from that warband.
Yes.
The rest is just skinks and old blood. Well,
do they have two priests in that? It seems to be a really good value in terms of alternate models for AOS, like how Lee recommends people get the Thundrix Profiteers for the Chemist and the alternate Sky Warden and
it's basically the same. You get one priest. I'm not familiar. If you want to dive deeper into it, I think Caleb Hastings has done a show where he covered that. He's quite disappointed there is no Croxigor model, no new Croxigor sculpt in there. So basically you get a Star Priest, which you already get in their start collecting, so you might already have 2 or 3 of those. But it's an alternative model, great. And then you get 3 different posed skink models, so with a blowpipe, a club, and a spear. A Saurus Old Blood, which you can use as a unit leader, I guess, and a Chameleon Skink, which is very pretty, but I doubt people will buy 5 of those boxes to make a 5-man Chameleon unit.
Did the new Seraphon Blood Bowl team have a Croxigor sculpt? I can't remember if it came out with a Croxigor. I love Blood Bowl. I think it's one of Games Workshop's best games. So I just can't remember off the top of my head.
I'm not sure, but I guess because they all have like one big guy, one big monster dude, like an ogre or a troll or something. So yeah, maybe you'll find a Croxigor there.
Yep. And the other news is there's a new Stormcast hero, because that's what the game needs. It's more Stormcast heroes.
Yeah, he has a cool COVID
haircut.
Cut your own hair at home hairstyle.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Whatever.
Yeah,
it's a bit sad. I'd prefer to have like something else. I don't know. Some other faction. And I know it's Stormcast are there.
It's the same joke with Primaris Lieutenants, right? Like.
Yeah, but at least they got a Necron wizard guy. So okay, give us a.
Is there an Easter egg in that model though? He's holding a Gorgon head or
something from
Easter egg. He's like a beast slayer, whatever. He has a hammer axe dual weapon thingy, and he has a Gorgon head. Or what's a Cyclop? Or
it's an axe hammer, not a hammer axe.
Yeah, whatever. Stupid humans creating axe hammer things.
Okay.
Almost like those cosplaying elves.
They teased the next warband as well, which.
Well, a model that we've already seen the same cutout, just from a different angle. Which should debut in March, I think was their timeline.
Yeah, so
March. Well, like they gave the silhouette, right? And then in the silhouette, you saw the hilt and the guard of the sword that was in the rumor engine, which you also saw in the New Year's reveal video. Like, it's like at this point, they're just trolling us. Like, it's got to be a vampire at this point, right? Like SpongeBob text, like vampirates, like everything is vampirates. But this is, what's going to be so funny is everybody's waiting for a new vampire faction, and it's going to be like a new Silver Tower quest game where it's like vampires and vampire hunters, and everybody's going to be like, ah!
No, it's going to be like that war band, and we're going to discover that 50 of those room engines were like from one model, just all the different angles. And people, especially Warhammer Weekly, will be so disappointed that it's not an entire army. It's just one war band, and it will have crap rules.
Tom would literally just explode on camera. Like,
yeah, he's been hoping for vampire pirates. I'm not sure if it's like vampire pirates or if it's vampire, or we get a first view of the Umbranef, the dark elf Malarian faction. Maybe
the hilt of the sword looks very elfy to me,
because the hand is it's like a very ladylike elf hand. You know,
I noticed the pointed ears as well, but some vampire lore has pointed ears and some don't, but I definitely, that caught my eye specifically.
So we'll see.
Yeah,
it's exciting. Well, they're teasing us with new models. That's how the business works.
Yeah, I mean they did it every day in December, pretty much. So
but that was really honestly.
So, no, I think that's pretty much all in the news here, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Should we talk about Fyreslayers then?
Yes.
Yeah, about there just in case.
Well, Kharadron, right? But like, yeah, Fyreslayers too.
Oh. Allies.
Yes. So this is a new series. Hopefully, if it goes well, let us know if you do like it. Hit that like button and comment and stuff. So we're trying out a new format, so we might change things up, but we're going to basically try and cover everything you need to know if you're going to come up against Fyreslayers and you don't know anything about them, and from a Kharadron Overlords perspective as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we haven't got time to go through literally their whole book because that would take forever, so we're sticking to the most important things. So I guess to start, we should overview the faction a little bit. So the
30,000 foot view, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what can you expect when you show up at the table? You know your opponent is Fyreslayers. What are you expecting? So Fyreslayers generally are known for strong melee units, debatably the strongest melee unit in the game, if buffed correctly. Although they run around naked, they have very high armor saves and feel no pains. So yeah, and that's all achieved by. So it's not an inherit armor save, but it's all through buffs, and especially all those buffs works through prayers or abilities. So it's not like spells that you can stop with a navigator. Fyreslayer list will often have a very high wound count because all of their infantry models have at least 2 wounds. So like Thunderers, for example, they have a 32 millimeter base, the standard foot troops, the 3 units that they have, so it's not many. They all have 2 wounds. As an order army, they have a high bravery, so bravery 7, bravery 8.
For like something that's not a demon or
exactly, not demon or death, they have a high bravery. They have access to battle shock immunity. So, and because they have 2 wounds each, so it's hard to like battle shock them off. As I said,
and their inherent toughness will like resist losing models, so that even adds on top of that, right?
Exactly. So then, as I said, they use prayers rather than magic. Also, their faction endless spells are not spells, but invocations, like Horn. They're prayers, so you can't do much about them. Although they need to roll at the end of each round to see if the thing disappears or not. They're dwarves, so slow. All the foot troops, apart from the dragons, have a 4-inch base move. So, well, we know what that means. There are access to being faster, but it's oh, look who woke up.
Hey,
Morning.
good evening.
Better
Morning. How's things?
Good. We're just going through like the first what you see when you're facing a Fyreslayer army.
Right.
They have no access to flying, so all those reroll hits of 1 from ships in Zilfin, for example, or the navigator ability does not have a target, doesn't work against them. Everything, as I said, depends on aura buffs, and those are all because at the time it's a rather new book. Everything is wholly within. All those buffs are mostly wholly within 12-inch. So they all shoved together. They're always in a big bubble, a big Death Star bubble. That's how they appear in the wildlife. And yeah, I mean, depends on lists, but they can go quite low. I think 3 drops is what you see. Maybe 2 drops. 1 drop is not possible from my opinion. Yeah, it's possible. It's not viable. So, but they can go up to 7, 8, 9 drops. So you can outdrop them if you run a 2 drop or a 1 drop, but they can also have like a 3 drop. So yeah, that's basically like the over top view of a Fyreslayer army. You will struggle a bit because they all look the same. From not only from 30,000 feet away, but like from 2 feet away. They're all naked. Most people paint them with their glorious old world orange hair, Slayer hair, and they have different weapon options. So just don't be shy to ask your opponent. Please point out who's the hero, which unit is what. So you just know, yeah.
And because everything's on the same size base, basically.
Yeah. Also, the foot heroes like inside a unit, it's hard to tell them apart.
Yep. So I guess what all this adds up to is a melee army with good durability in a number of different ways. That's slow.
Slow, very tough, very hard hitting in combat. A lot of models, a lot of wounds. Hard to shift.
Well, smooth is slow, but they have ways of moving into.
Yes, they have, and we'll go into detail on the specific abilities they have.
It can be surprisingly speedy. They can. They will cross that
position,
table,
right? 4-inch base.
Well, I think I'm not hearing Matthew now. He's cutting out.
Of course,
Matthew?
I knew this was going to happen.
No, you're back.
We can hear you again.
Right. Sorry about that. What I was saying was basically right. They only have a 4-inch base move, but we'll get into this later where they have a double pile in. So even though they're deceptively slow, where with that all of a sudden is an extra 6-inch movement, but it's in the combat phase rather than the movement phase, and that can catch people off guard, especially a smart player that has very purposeful pile-ins and understands the core mechanics of the game, where they'll be able to all of a sudden pile in around you and onto an objective or something like that where you thought you had blocked it off. So it really lends itself to a very high level cerebral type of player.
Yep, definitely.
Cool. So let's move on to the allegiance abilities. We'll start with something that all Fyreslayers will have, because obviously, like most factions, Fyreslayers have sub-factions and things that you can pick and choose, like artifacts and battalions that you might not include. But if you come up against Fyreslayers, they will always have their Hermdar runes. So the way these work is kind of like a choice thing. At the start of their hero phase, they can choose which rune to activate, and then they roll a dice, and if they roll a 6, then it gets an enhanced effect. But that's the only effect the roll has. That it's not like if you roll a 1, they don't get it or something. They always get something. They might get a slightly better version. So there's 6 different ones, which means in a 5-round game, there's one that's not going to be used. So they can sort of pick and choose which ones to use, but they can't use one more than once.
Exactly, and they don't have to use one. Maybe in a round where they say, "Oh, I'm going to sit out. I'm not going to use one." So it's an option. It's very interesting because they can choose. So and it will happen. The base effect will happen. So they can plan with this, which makes it a very good allegiance ability, in my opinion. It's a nice thing. There's good buffs. It's board wide. Every Fyreslayer unit on the table will get this buff. And yeah, they have a chance on a 6 to get an enhanced thing, which is great when it happens, but you don't plan with that.
No, I mean, they're not going to plan to assume they're going to get it. And if you're playing against them, you can't assume they're going to get it either, because it's like a 1 in 6 chance. So on average, over the course of the game, they won't get any, in theory.
Yes, and this has happened to me, and I have had games where I had a 6 on each turn. So it's a dice game.
Nice.
When it happens, it's great, because that's then, it's a serious buff they get, because it's every unit on the field.
Okay.
So obviously there's ones that are better, or you want to use more than others. Maybe I think the one most preferred is the extra movement. So you have a chance to get a +2 inch move on your move characteristic. So you can already plan to have a 6 inch move in one round. That's good to know. If you roll a 6, you get a +2 to charge as well. But as I said, I wouldn't plan with that. Other ones that are very favored is the one that gives you an extra rend on all melee weapons. And if you roll a 6 and an additional rend, so you could face weapons like base unit with -3 rend. So that's great. Like for them, not for you, but for them. A standard one is reroll ones to hit, which is also great because it's both for missile and melee weapons. And if they roll a 6 on that one, they all get an extra attack, which is also obviously for obvious reasons.
The
good.
extra is only in melee though.
Yes, exactly. Maybe the one less used, or at least I use less, is a +1 bravery, because they already have a 7 or an 8 bravery, plus then being 10 or more models in a unit, and so on and so on. So maybe less used. The enhanced version would be to be battle shock immune, but they already have access to that, or use a command point for inspiring presence. So maybe not the favorite choice. Another one which I tend to use in my 5 rounds is that wound rolls of a 6. Those attacks cause an extra damage. And the enhanced effect is that immediately, like when you roll this, each enemy unit within 3 inches suffers a mortal wound on a 2+. So if you're all over the board, every unit is in combat, it's nice. It's an extra mortal wound. Maybe like I don't use this often, is each unit in this army has a missile attack, but it's an 8-inch throwing axe, hits on 5s, wounds on 5, so it's a lot of dice that you roll, and they usually don't do anything. But with this rune, you get a +1 to hit for the throwing axes, and on a 6 you also get +1 to wound. But yeah, I mean, throwing axes barely do anything, although I have killed a Nagash with a throwing axe once.
Wow.
That was the last wound he had. I just everyone threw his axe and okay, dead.
Nice.
It's like an old school Nintendo boss where you got to hit him like in this one random spot. And you just went.
Yeah.
Boom.
But the thing is, I had 3 heroes within. I said I'll just roll these all together. So we don't know which hero actually killed Nagash. So yeah, maybe. So the ones you'll see being used obviously is the extra move. So keep that in mind. Like they can move 6 instead of 4. Extra rend, reroll ones to hit, and maybe that 6 is doing extra damage.
Question for you.
Sorry, do you want to say that again, Max?
Hey, Max. Yeah, sorry about that. Is there a typical order of operations that you like to Fyreslayers people will typically use these in a particular order. This feels very reminiscent of the Nurgle
cycle of corruption.
Where you can have sort of this right. Nurgle, you have very limited control. This you can pick and choose. So that seems to be very nice. But the first round would be extra movement. The second one would be extra wounds. So it's similar here. But do Fyreslayers players typically choose a particular order of?
Depends what kind of list they're playing. The first your first reaction would be to use the extra move in the first round, just to get into combat, because that's where you're good at. Although I've learned that often you want the extra move in later turns when you're running for objectives. Because
it's the same question as the Zilfin move, isn't it? It's like you can use it to cross the table early on, or you can save it for later when you really need to get onto those objectives.
So maybe a smarter move is because often Fyreslayer units or armies, they will say, "Well, come to me and hit me, and then I'll hit you hard back," because we will see later they have abilities to strike before you. Oh, we're in the woods now.
Yeah, he just suddenly just teleported. Yeah,
I did fly high up to my outstairs, so I have a little bit better connection.
It was a Runesmiter tunnel jeep.
Great.
Yeah, there you go.
He left the garrison. Okay, yeah. As I said, there's maybe the move one is used earlier or late game. The other ones reroll ones to hit or extra rend is when they're like in combat with you and they say, okay, now I want to destroy you, I get the extra rend. But it's a very adaptable allegiance ability, which makes it great. I think that's one of the better ones that GW has designed.
The interesting thing about the reroll ones to hit is it's effectively at least one free command point in some ways. And the more units they have in combat, the more the better.
And it's shooting and
yes,
and melee. So they have a good shooting unit. So yeah.
So I don't know if I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you guys heard my question before. Was this feels very very similar to the Nurgle Allegiance ability, but I didn't know if there's a particular order of operations that Fyreslayers typically use these in.
Yeah, as I said, maybe you didn't hear due to your connection. As either the movement gets used first just to get in combat, or people use it late game to run onto objectives. Like when the fight's over, now I'm just gonna get onto your objective or the other ones. Hits and rend are then often used round 2, round 3, because that's when you're in combat. The throwing axes gets barely used, or like last round, I want to kill something off an objective. Like I need to have more models. Okay, let's just get extra wounds from throwing axes, and the bravery gets barely used.
Rarely used,
in my opinion.
All right, cool. Thanks.
There's 3 of them that are basically combat buffs, aren't they? They just do it in slightly different ways.
Yeah.
I can imagine throwing axes being potentially useful if someone tries to tag a unit of Fyreslayers, or if they're in combat, they've nearly killed something and not quite. Like you get left with 20 Hearthguard Bezerkers stuck in combat with a unit with 1 wound left. Or I mean, obviously if they've got 20, then they've got lots of if you really want to make sure you get out
Hearthguard Berserkers don't get stuck in combat. They just delete.
No. My point is that you could, it's one of those opportunistic things that you could use maybe to get out of combat before charging.
Or they use it to, but it's often it's like a desperate thing. Okay, I want to get out of get out of combat to then move on to an objective or so. Then they'll use that one. But I mean, the +1 to hit for throwing axes, so it's 4s and 5s. It's not going to kill anything. No,
they don't have any rend, do they? Yeah, no.
No, throwing axes don't have rend. They're 8 inches, so it's
a good chance they'll just bounce off your Arcanauts.
Yeah, the throwing axes will bounce off most things. From a unit of 10 or a unit of 20, you'll get maybe 1 wound if you're lucky.
Yeah. From a KO perspective, they're not going to be any worry for us, the throwing axes.
No. With 4+ or better saves, no.
Would you agree from a KO perspective that, generally speaking, all of the melee ones are kind of neither here nor there, because if you're in melee with Fyreslayers, it's a bad problem anyway.
Yeah.
So if they start using
the extra rend,
the bad problem's got a little bit worse, but it was bad anyway.
The extra rend hurts because it affects both your save rolls if you're going to use a gold to reroll it. So both rolls are on a 6 instead of a 4. And the unmodified wound rolls doing extra damage, I mean, that has the same effect. So, okay, you save one, but the other one goes through, but then does double damage, so you haven't won anything. So it's the same. I think if you're in combat with Fyreslayers, you're already in a bad place.
Yeah.
Because that's where they shine. They are one of the better melee armies in the game.
I think they're probably the one we need to watch out for most is the +2 move.
That catches people off guard because obviously you place your models. Okay, your threat range, 4-inch move, 12-inch charge. Okay, I'm gonna sit here, 16 inches away, and they say, well, I can +2 move, and then extra charge and so on, and then you're in combat.
I think a couple of the. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, imagine if you're playing Monar and you've positioned your ship just far enough away based on the 4-inch move and then that they won't be able to charge you, and then they pull out that extra 2-inch move, and then it's like, well, okay, now they've gone from needing.
If you're not familiar with that can catch you off guard.
I was just going to say a couple of these enhanced effects would really, really mess you up if you were banking on them not rolling a 6. I think the extra mortal wound damage is something that Kharadron don't have a lot of mortal wound protection generally, except for basically the escort vessel rule. But then, even from a Mornar perspective, the +2 move is something you can account for, but the +2 charge completely circumventing the Gale Force staff is something, that's one of the questions I always ask my opponents. Who can run in charge? How can you run in charge? And who has plus charge rolls? So if you're banking on them not rolling a 6 and then they do, which my opponent would. Obviously. Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, plan for the worst and hope for the best. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we covered them a fair bit. The sub-factions we're going to cover a bit later. Because they have a very large impact on the lists. Is this the only allegiance ability, Max, or is it just that this is the only one?
It's this, and the other one is that you can have choose one of 4 sub-factions. So this is still a book that lets you choose. You can, but you can go without. They're called lodges in Fyreslayers. They're lodges, the sub-factions. So you can choose. You don't have to. I've rarely seen a tournament army without a lodge or like a homebrew version. Although they have good command traits and good artifacts, the abilities that the sub-factions give you are just so strong.
Yeah, precisely.
And they've got some things like prayers, and obviously you mentioned artifacts. We're not going to go into detail on all of them because it's going to take
we'll cover like the main, the ones you either see a lot of times because they're so good, or which can have a big impact on KO.
Yeah, there's one specific artifact that we pulled out. We're going to look at in a minute.
All right.
But let's.
All these lodges they make you take one artifact, and there's no way to circumvent it because it's not like a specific hero, but it's just the first hero. At least I think at least the two ones that are most common have that. Not sure about the other two.
Some of the highlights of the faction, the things you're most likely to see, probably not a surprise. Some of the things we've got listed here for most people, even if you haven't played against Fyreslayers, you would have heard of Hearthguard Bezerkers, I'd imagine.
Yes.
Auric Hearthguard is their only shooting unit. Long-range shooting unit, because they all have the throwing axes, but one that actually has shooting that can do something.
Yeah, but that's not the main reason people take them.
No. Battlesmiths, Runesmiters are probably the most important heroes. The Runic Fyrewall, which is one of their magma invocations, which is an endless spell, but not an endless spell. Because
it's a prayer.
Spell.
It's like a corn prayer.
Judgment, not a prayer, because.
But they have to pray for it. So.
Yes.
They have to pray for a judgment, which you're usually not praying for. You don't want to be judged.
They want a judgment in their favour. They want Lords of the Lodge, which is a battalion. And then
that gets used a lot.
Yeah, two lodges, Hermdar and Vostarg.
So
those are the most used.
Yeah, so I think Hermdar was the most used sub-faction in the last CanCon after Petrifex. So Hermdar's common.
We will see why it is so strong. Although now with the bit shifting meta, people might lean more towards Vostarg or Lofnir, which is the old Magma Drop one. But I still rate Vostarg better than Lofnir.
Yeah.
So that's why we just
we're doing this pre-FAQ, so you never know. Magma Drops might all go down 50 points. Well,
they went down 10 points in the last FAQ in summer. Yeah. So, but yeah, Magma Drops those are the dragon ones, the dragon animals. They have the monsters. Yeah, they have other problems. So we're not going to go too much into detail with them.
Well, they don't have a 4-up after save, so you know.
They can have a 6-up, but that's it.
So is this because these are the things we're going to go into in detail in a minute? Are there some honourable mentions that we haven't picked to go into detail? Volkites, do you think? The Hearthguard Light, is that the way?
Best just base battle line.
Yeah, they do get a 4+ after save though, don't they?
No, they don't. They used to have a beard save in the old book. When you took, the more you took, the better the save got. So that's where people were running like 3 units of 30. But they changed it completely. They gave that ability to Hearthguard, and Volkites are just your.
They've lost that now. Okay.
You use Volkites when you need battle line in your list, basically. I'd say they're not bad. Matthew, you're muted.
Sorry, I was saying Volkites became Hearthguard. Volkites used to be God, I said it perfectly the first time. Damn it! No, but Volkites used to be Hearthguard until Hearthguard became Volkites.
Right. Okay.
Yes, I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah. Okay. So they lost their 4+ save that they used to have then after save. Hair save is what a lot of people call it.
Yeah. Or beard save. Yeah.
Beard save. Yeah, that's what I always heard.
They still have the sling things, shield things. What do you call them? Sling?
Yeah, Captain they have a sling shield.
Sling shield. I thought it was like slingshot shield.
If you equip them with a shield to Volkites, when they charge, they have to throw the shield. It's not an option. That annoys me a lot of the times because it means that in that combat round, they don't get the +1 save because they just threw their shields away. Then magically in the next round, they have their shields back.
They pick them up off the dead bodies.
But then it's, I mean, for each model within 8 inches of the enemy unit. So even if you don't get everyone into combat, the whole unit can throw the shield. On a 6, they do a mortal wound. So yeah, you get 2 or 3 mortal wounds out of that.
Yeah. The shields are something you might want to be aware of because they can do mortal wounds, and we don't really have a protection against them.
But it's not many mortal wounds.
No, so. It's few and far between. But
personally, I'm annoyed that they have to do that. because I'd rather have the extra save.
So Fyreslayers see it more as a inconvenience than a bonus.
I see it as an inconvenience. I'm not sure how other Fyreslayer players see it.
And then if you end up doing some casualties, you could get yourself out of charge range. Is that how that mechanic would work?
Yeah, because you've already charged. You would stop
No,
yourself.
you do it at the end of the charge phase, or when when the unit charged, then you throw your shields.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that could happen. People could remove models, and then you're out of combat, and you can pile in 3 inches, but maybe not get as much models into combat as you would wanted to.
Right.
Volkites are the only unit that get a +2 charge. They have a Horn of Grimnir, a musician, so they get a +1, which Hearthguard and Aurics do not get.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of becoming a bit of a standard now for just general rules writing, is if there's a musician, then it normally means you're going to
Depends. Some get +2 run, some get +2 to charge. So it depends a bit on the unit.
Seraphon usually get reroll charges with their musicians.
Yeah.
Orcs get +2, right?
Yeah, and there's I mean, like Cities of Sigmar, even in there where they standardized it a lot, there's even some where they get +1 to run and charge, and then others it's just +1 to charge.
Yeah, others get +1 to run and charge. Others just get +2 to charge, but not for running. So it depends. But that's often like the musician and the standard bearer, those 2 rules.
Yeah, it's generally a good thing to look out for, though, is if you don't know what a unit does, if you see a musician, then they've probably got some sort of movement buff.
Yes.
Of some sort. Yep. So let's look at one of these in detail. I think it's Hearthguard that we've got first.
Those are when they remade the book, these were the bad boys of the realms. Then Flamers of Zinj came out and no one spoke about Hearthguard anymore. But yes, these are your hard hitters.
If you're playing against a competitive Fyreslayers army, you're going to see some Hearthguard Bezerkers, whether it's a complete list based around spamming this unit, or if it's just one unit, you're going to see some Hearthguard Bezerkers for sure.
Mostly you'll see at least one, because that's also a good battalion that they are needed in. Right. So if we look at the base stats, I mean, 2 wounds, we said that, 4-inch move, 5+ save doesn't look scary, 8 bravery, which is high, standard 8. But what is important to notice here is the ability duty onto death. So they have a 6+ feel no pain. If there's a hero, and we will see later, Fyreslayer armies do have a lot of foot heroes within 10, so not wholly within or anything, just needs to be within 10 of one model from the unit. That 6+ turns into a 4+ feel no pain or damage prevention roll. So already 2 wounds, and then on top of that, they get a 4+ wound shrug or wound ignore. That's strong by itself. And then there's abilities and prayers and so on to improve their save. So it's an easy thing to get them on a 3+ save and then a 4+ duty onto death roll.
So you're always going to see this unit with a hero in tow, basically.
Yeah, there's always some hero babysitting Fyreslayer units.
And that's where the inherent toughness comes in. When you have a 3+ armor save, which is already really good on itself, but then you have the damage prevention roll just straight up cutting any incoming damage by half. And then on top of that, having 2 wounds. So the number of models that you kill is also effectively cut in half. I think I've done the math to do something like even 100 attacks at 4/4, no Ren 1 damage would only kill a couple of Hearthguard Bezerkers, because they cut the damage by 2/3 and then a half, and then the number of models removed is cut in half. So just insane toughness when all the synergies line up.
So how big a unit? How big a unit are these?
So these used to be 30-man blocks, which was fantastic. That's just one big Death Star. But I personally found it's very hard to get them all into combat anyway, so I used to run 2 blocks of 15. And then in the winter FAQ last year, so the year before last, they said no, we'll cap them at 20, which I said, well, fantastic, because you get the last 5 for almost free, for like 40 points. You get 5 of them, and you get the Horde discount at 20,
That's
which makes it better. It makes it was an improvement for them. In my opinion.
You're usually going to see them in squads of 20 with 40 wounds.
20 or like one unit of 10 if they run out of points for the list.
If you're against a nice player, I've heard some Fyreslayer players say that they will take them in 15 because they think if you take them in 20, you're being a bit of a douche. Maybe they don't think. Maybe that was more of a thing.
Well, maybe that's like friendly club games, but
yeah.
The headline was, though, for a modest points investment, you could get 40 Hearthguard Bezerkers for a little bit more than what it used to cost for 30. So, that FAQ, sure, it made you not take units of 30 anymore, but you ended up with more Hearthguard Berserkers on the table.
Units of 30 were just unkillable.
Exactly.
Because they were never run from Battle Shock, because already they get a +2 to the Bravery 8. Plus other things, plus Battle Shock immunity anyway, and
it was a question from the chat.
Was very unwieldy though.
Is it better to just try and ignore the 20 Hearthguard Berserkers, or at the very least try and take out the heroes first? I think you do want to take the heroes out first. Unfortunately, that's probably not as easy as it first seems.
We'll go into detail where you wanna take away their, because Hearthguard Berserkers without heroes. In the next round, when all those buffs go away, then they're a 5+, 6+, and that's so much easier to kill. Although, often maybe the best tactic is to ignore them if you can, and the Fyreslayer player will make it that you cannot ignore them, because either they sit in the middle of the board on the juicy objectives, or they're like in your face. Although with Kharadron, because we have the ability to just shift the entire army somewhere else, we have a better chance at outrunning them. So maybe the smarter move for them is just to sit on your objectives and wait for you, because they can take the shooting. You can bombard them; they'll sit there for 2-3 rounds, scoring.
Yeah. But typically, to address the chat's question directly, like there is almost no reason from a KO perspective to put your shots into the unit of Hearthguard Bezerkers before you've removed the hero, because effectively all or most of your damage is going to be completely shrugged off. So you're putting your offense into something that's just completely not worthwhile. Whereas even if the heroes have abilities to shrug damage off, as we'll find out later, any wounds that do go through to the heroes are going to have sort of a compounding effect on your ability to remove the Hearthguards.
Yeah, and the other problem is our best shots, our most damaging shots, are mostly 12-inch reach.
Oh boy!
With a 4-inch move, possibly 6-inch, like you're losing units, because then they're gonna get at you. They're gonna survive. They have enough units that survive that shooting barrage that you just put in there, and then they got you.
From a KO perspective.
How many wounds on average, and what kind do heroes have, and what kind of aftersave do they have? The Fyreslayer ones.
Yeah, well, we'll go into that with the next highlights, because they have options to wound shrug, to throw off wounds onto other units.
Okay.
Then there's buffs to make them -1 to hit, -1 to wound. They can block line of sight. So there's a lot of things that they can stack to protect their heroes. Although they're heroes, they're very survivable.
Would a rat trap with 2d3 mortal wounds do much on average?
Maybe one wound.
1 wound from 2d3 mortals?
Yes, because we'll go into that later, but they have an ability to ignore the effects of spells and endospells.
Okay.
So
And from a KO's perspective, the ability to focus range damage exactly where you want it, that's going to be your biggest strength when tackling the Hearthguards, because obviously their biggest ability to increase that 6-up shrug to a 4-up shrug comes from the heroes. So from a KO perspective, having the ability to pinpoint your damage where you want it is something that other factions simply don't have. So even though it might seem like this War Scroll is almost insurmountable from a KO perspective, we're in a much better position to chip away the buff pieces than a lot of other factions are.
Yeah, other factions, what they'll see, they have this so-called Death Star, because everything wants to be wholly within 12 for various buffs, and the hero in the middle. They're not going to get to the hero. They have no chance to get there, so they need to run into the Hearthguard, which then in the Hermdar sub-faction, they can strike for you. With some battalions, they can strike again. Yeah, it's futile.
And from what I understand, Max, the difference between the broadaxe and the poleaxe, obviously the broadaxe having Ren 1 base 2 damage, but the poleaxe, as you see from the smoldering braziers, does 2 mortal wounds. There's very little change in the damage output mathematically speaking.
It depends.
It depends on the target, right?
Yeah, it's a good thing that you highlight this. So each one has 2 attacks. The leader of the unit is always called a car. Doesn't matter what kind of unit it is. In Fyreslayers, they're all called car. It's like the one name they have.
That kills people,
Carl.
So they all have 2 attacks. They all have 2-inch reach. So with a 32mm base, they can fight from 2 ranks. Mm-hmm. So that's why I said it's easier to get 20 into combat than 30. But 20 is
2 inch with 2 inches of 32 is really good.
So that's possibly 41 attacks. And the important thing with the Flame Strike poleaxes, they're the ones with the chains that you can see on the small image here on the top. They do, on a hit of 6, unmodified hit roll of 6, they do 2 mortal wounds in addition. 2 mortal wounds. If they fight twice, they do that. They can throw out like 14, 15, 16 mortal wounds per combat round. The problem here is if they fight against someone like Archeon or Nurgle that makes them reroll 6s, suddenly those poleaxes are much less effective. Because then it's only freeze, no rend, 1 damage.
Then, or something that had a high after save that can block those mortals, right? Which might not have the ability to fight off the rend.
So the poleaxes seem very strong, but it depends on the opponent. That's why often in armies you see 2 units of Hearthguard, 1 with those and 1 with those. So they have some tactical choice they can make. The broadaxes are great because, I mean, freeze and freeze is already a very good stat line, but they have a rend and then 2 damage, and we have seen they have the possibility to add another rend, maybe in a roll of 6 another. So that's rend 3. That's like a stat line of a prime.
Yeah.
I mean, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2 is already what our carbines are, and we know how effective. Like even 8 carbine shots is from Ironclad.
And these are 41 carbine shots.
Yeah.
It's like, and they can reroll hits to 1. They can get extra damage on a wound roll of 6. So they have all these options that they can trigger. They can use their gold runes, where we use gold chairs. They use gold runes, and so dangerous people don't get too close.
I think from my perspective, I would rather come up against the broadaxes than the poleaxes, because say, for instance, if they charge your Ironclad and then you chuck in your 8 of gold, you've got more chance of surviving that rend than you do the mortal wounds.
Although I doubt an Ironclad will survive a full round of combat with broadaxes. It's tough. Especially, we'll see later why, because they can activate twice.
But say if it's a unit 10 then, or whatever it is, there's just the broadaxes, the rend, when you combine that with, say, 8 for gold to reroll saves, is less effective than, because we don't have that. We do have some protection for the ships against mortal wounds, but it's passing it on to the gun.
Yeah, on a 6. Yeah.
It's on a 6. It's not that effective.
No. So dangerous people. Both weapon options are very strong.
Matt,
often we'll see later. There's a battalion where they can fight twice. Often those have the poleaxes just to get that try again for mortals, because mortals are a safe bet. If you do mortals, that's mostly that kills people.
What were you saying, Lee?
Matt, you brought up the thing about about after saves will cut through the mortal wounds, but not the rend, but it will have the same effect on the rend as it will as the mortal wound.
Yes, but then it's 2 dice you need to roll because damage 2.
Yeah. So there was one other thing I was going to mention, but I can't remember what it was. Oh yes, the other thing was the mortal wounds from the poleaxes, because it's in addition to the normal damage. So if they activate their rune to get the double damage or the extra 1 damage on the unmodified wound roll of 6, because it's in addition, then you still make the wound roll.
Then you keep those dice in the pool.
Yep. Yeah. Whereas some other units in the game have things where, like, on a hit roll of 6, and then you just do the mortal wounds and you don't roll a wound or save. So
and why it's strong is because each attack procs it to 2 mortal wounds.
Yeah.
It's just like, so for example, you have 41 attacks, you roll 5, 6 sixes. That's 12 mortal wounds already.
It just adds up.
Yeah.
It's just,
and then, if they then get 6s to wound as well, which then do 2 damage, and then you start failing saves on them.
Yeah.
And the reason why this unit is like so good, and you see it so much, right, is we're talking about all the potential damage output that this unit can do. But on top of that, it's also one of the most resilient units that you'll find in the game, at least for a battle line or just sort of a straight infantry unit.
Yeah,
so not only is it like a lot of times you'll see, obviously Daughters of Cain have a similar situation where they have insanely offensively driven units with a very durable buffs from other war scrolls. So it's sort of a similar situation, but so it's not a glass cannon. This isn't something that comes in, smashes into your lines, does a bunch of damage, but then it can't take a punch. This thing can take a punch as well as it can give it out. So the only weakness is that a lot of it has to do with synergies, which I think we're probably going to move on to.
Yeah. The thing is also, often they will not run into you to fight you, but they will wait for you to come.
They'll wait.
Because they can take the hit and they will punch you back.
Well, and then you're going to see later that they get onto objectives and they get better when they're on the things that make you win the game. So it's just,
Yes.
Strangely, in AOS, the half-naked Berserker armies are the toughest.
It's cinematic.
So it's starting to get a little cold. So I'm gonna fly high to another location.
each slide he'll come to us from somewhere.
That's a good
but we'll keep in mind we have seen freeze and freeze already, a good stat line. We'll then later see why there's ways to make that even better.
Mm-hmm.
So the next unit, same kit, same box. That's why they look very similar. It's just the arm pose is different, the weapon is different. Are the Auric Hearthguard. So everything in this army is either Rune, Fire, Hearthguard. Like they all sound the same. It's very similar.
They look the same.
Similar names. They look very similar. They're all related. Again, similar stat line. 2 wounds, 4-inch move, 5+ save, and these are bravery 7, so 1 less. These are the shooty boys, as they are called. They have magma pikes, which have 2 shots each, only hit on a 4, so that's not as good. But wound on a 3 have 1 rend, 1 damage. The important thing here is not so important for KO because we do not have monsters. But if they damage, or if they hit a monster, those attacks get damage too. So if you're shooting at big enemy heroes, Terrorgeists, Archeons, whoever that have the monster keyword, those shots will now do damage too. And maybe more importantly, if they have inflicted a wound on a monster, afterwards they roll a dice, 1 die. On a 4+, they have that unit's move and subtract 1 from hit rolls because it's all like cooling down magma, gluing to his feet, and he can't move. So that's a nice thing they have, that they can shoot like a Terrorgeist, for example.
So
do a lot of
giants hate
damage,
these
and then-
guys.
yeah, giants will not like these guys. Although a giant has enough output. The bad thing about these is hitting on 4s. That's a bit annoying.
Yeah. Although like the stat line of their magma pipes is basically the same as Thunderers with rifles.
Yeah, it's just the other way around. Yeah.
3s and 4s and 4s and 3s are effectively the same. The only thing is, from like if you've got reroll 1s, then 3s and 4s, like you can get reroll 1s to hit easily in the game, can't you? So
yes, and the ability to like then subtract 1 from hit rolls from my monster is great. The other ability, and that's the main reason these people get taken, often in units of 5, is the Sworn Protectors. So if the unit is within 3 inches of a foot hero, or a hero that's not mounted on a magma rough, so those are the foot heroes.
Is that the keyword, foot hero?
Yeah, foot slugging north. On a 4+, when you allocate the wound, so this is important because this is then if you would have an artifact that would give you a damage prevention roll, you need to choose either or, because both happen when you allocate, and from the last GHB we know you can't have 2 wound negating abilities rolls, whatever. So and they have to do this. There's no choice, which sometimes brings you in a situation where you kill off models from the Auric Hearthguard unit, but you didn't want to because you want to contest an objective. So, but yeah, often you will find the unit of 5 next to 1 hero or 2 heroes, just bodyguarding them. Then, if they're in range, they will shoot their 11 shots over the heads of the other units, but mostly they get taken for the saving the heroes. So this is one source that makes heroes much more survivable. A 4+ damage prevention roll. And because they have 2 wounds, they can take, that's a unit of 5 is basically 10 extra wounds. So it doubles the wound characteristic of a foot hero, basically. It works like every it's wounds and multiple wounds, and it works like all these things. You need to roll 1 die after the other, because if the hero dies, then all the other wounds just evaporate.
But you're going to see these guys protecting or taking damage from the heroes that are then protecting the Hearthguard Berserkers.
Yeah,
so
that's why it's all synergies. It's all a big bubble of
positive feedback loop. It's a positive feedback loop that all just compounds on itself to make this unstoppable killing machine that doesn't die.
Yeah. So these. What also is what people sometimes use is bigger units, and then they we will see later there's an ability to deep strike or to teleport 1. They use them then to attack monsters, because that's something people do not expect from Fyreslayer armies, that they deep strike a shooting unit and then with damage to take out your big monster.
I was playing at Adepticon a couple years ago. This is again when the old book was around, and he tunneled a massive unit of Hearthguard Bezerkers right behind my Glotkin, and my army was centered around that one piece and just evaporated it. Like it just removed it from the table, and it was a rude awakening what these guys can do to monsters.
Yeah, so if you see them in bigger units than 5, they might be meant for offensive.
From a KO perspective, another thing that Auric Hearthguard that can do is zone out the space behind a Hearthguard unit. So you're going to have that Hearthguard unit, you're going to have the priest or the hero next to it, and the Aurics are obviously going to take the damage away from the priest, but a secondary ability that they're going to be able to do is deny you places to fly high. And a smart player, which Fyreslayers players typically are, is exactly. Just smarter, more beautiful people in general, right? But they're going to put them in spots that are also near terrain and just completely deny you
So even though we were saying that, yeah, Fyreslayers are slow, there are multiple ways that they can take away your biggest advantage as a KO player, which is speed and placement.
Yeah, often these, we have not talked about this, but what Fyreslayer armies also get is a terrain piece. It's a small battle forge. It's the so-called pizza oven. It's not big. The footprint is not big, but it's a terrain piece, so boats cannot fly high within 1 inch of it. So they can strategically place it. It's big enough to hide a hero behind it. But often the buffs the hero gets for prayers from it means that the hero wants to stay close to it, and it's deployed in their deployment in their territory. So often, like in their backfield somewhere, which means the hero will be close by, which means a unit of Auric Hearthguard will be close by, zoning out that backfield. So often these 5-man units get used like in your backfield to zone out and to prevent deep striking or fly high and so on. Yeah.
The biggest takeaway for a KO player though is basically any shooting that you put in heroes is basically halved by having these nearby, as well as also they're basically they're going to provide lookout so as well.
Yes. If there's 3 or more models, and they come often used in units of 5s with 2 wounds, so they will have 3 models for some time. So -1 to hit from that. Then they have an ablative wound, and we'll later see there's all other minuses as well, debuffs as well in the army.
I think we covered the Aurics, so let's move on to one of the commonly chosen heroes, which is the Battlesmith. So the big thing about him is really the buff that he can give out, isn't it?
Yes. The reasons why Battlesmiths get taken is they are in a 1 battalion that people very much like to use. This is a classic foot hero, 5 wounds, 4+ save, 4-inch move. So your standard Fyreslayer heroes. The small heroes, the Fyreslayer heroes, don't really want to be in combat or fighting. They're no slouches in combat, so they can kill stuff. For example, you see he has 3 attacks, freeze and freeze, 1 rend, 2 damage, but they're too valuable to get killed in combat. You want to keep them behind. But they can kill stuff. They can hit back. The most important ability here is the Icon of Grimnir. This is an ability where he just says in the hero phase, I will raise my icon. Everyone wholly within 12 inches now gets +1 to their save roll until the next hero phase. So this is fantastic. It's just a 3 + 1 save. So already now your Hearthguards are on 4+ save. And the downside, so the cost for this is that the Fyreslayer units that gain this +1 save, they cannot retreat.
Oh no!
Like Fyreslayer units do not want to retreat unless you really want to get out of combat to run or like retreat onto an objective, but that's a corner case. Often
most of the time
they're happy in combat
you and then move.
That's where they want to be. They want to be in combat, but keep it in mind. It might be important. So, for example, if you tag a hero with 3 engine riggers or so, if he's wholly within 12 of that Battlesmith, he cannot retreat from that combat with your engine riggers.
Yeah,
he's stuck in combat.
A big thing about this ability is even though they've adopted a lot of the new wording in this battle tome with like wholly within stuff, is they haven't adopted the new wording for these sorts of abilities, which is often that there would be if you're within range of any heroes with this ability. So it just says if you're in range of this model, so it stacks. So if you've got 2 Battlesmiths, then you're putting out +2 to save.
Yes, you could stack, although I've not often seen 2 Battlesmith in the list. He's 140.0. He's one of the more expensive infantry heroes in the army. But that ability is just great, because it's a +1 save. And there's another ability that if you actually slay him, which you might want to do, of course, because he gets that extra +2 on their damage prevention roll for the Hearthguards and so on, and he gets that +1 save. They can say they want to protect that icon that he just dropped on the floor, being dead. If any Fyreslayer unit wholly within 12, so in that aura buff, they can say they will protect it. They cannot make normal moves or charge moves for the rest of the battle. They're stuck where they are. However, they can still pile in, but they can re-roll all hits and wounds. So if these 20 Hearthguard Bezerkers with this Battlesmith, they're sitting on an objective. You manage to kill the Battlesmith.
But you need to
they don't want to go anywhere else, or they're already in combat with your, okay, maybe not KO, but other army, your big units. Now they all get reroll hits and reroll wounds.
Yeah, you can't kill the Hearthguard Bezerkers because they've got +1 to save, and they've got a 4+ after save because this hero is nearby. You can't kill the hero easily because the Auric Hearthguard are nearby. So by the time you do manage to kill him, he then makes the Hearthguard more killy.
Yes, but he locks them in place.
Yeah.
And
but it's going to take
often people don't opt to take that. They say, well, I don't care about the icon. He's dead. Who cares? Because I want to continue moving on to other objectives.
And they're pretty killy anyway.
And they're pretty killy anyway. So, but that's good to keep that in mind. If it's not Hearthguard, but if it's a block of, let's say, 20 Volkites or 30 Volkites that he's babysitting, now they get killy too, with their stat line of 3s and 4s. One red.
I mean, if they choose to take that option, we as KO can just sit around them and just shoot them until they die. Essentially, there's nothing they can do against us at that point.
Because they can't charge. So
no, they can't charge. They can only pile in. But if you're not in combat with them, you could just fly in circles and keep shooting them. But still, they still have a 5+ and a 6+. So we'll take some shots too.
There's no flying in circles needed. You can just sit there stationary.
There's other units in the army that will come to you. What we have highlighted here is a very commonly chosen artifact. Some people say this is a go-to. This is like the #1 selection in any army. The Nocildian icon. So he, as his icon of Grimnir, he can choose 3 different artifacts. And this is the mostly chosen one because this gives them the 4+ spell and endless spell ignore. So the same aura, wholly within 12 of him. Each time a unit is affected by a spell or endless spell, let's say you throw in the Warp Lightning Vortex onto that big blob that they are. They're all sitting nice, cozy together. Oh, fantastic. I'll throw on my Vortex. If you can fit it in, fantastic. They all get like no running and mortal wounds. Oh, guess what? Now they're rolling 4+. They can't fly, but they can't fly anyway. Guess what? Half of them will just ignore it. And ignore the effect means also ignore the no running.
Yeah.
But also, and then the damage that does go through, half of that's going to get thrown onto an Auric Hearthguard, right?
Or through the damage prevention roll of the Hearthguard, depending what you hit.
Exactly. So this is why when Kron asks about your 2d3 mortal wounds from your Warp Lightning Vortex, how many goes through? Well, it gets half from this, then it gets half from the Auric Hearthguard. That's why.
So it's 50-50 whether it'll even work in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah.
At an hour and 15 minutes here, guys, it's seeming pretty doom and gloom when you come up against the
Let's not.
I was going to say, but
it is a hard matchup. That's why we're doing this show. If it was easy, no one needs a show, because then it just show up and shoot.
It seems like we're basically highlighting all the strengths of the Fyreslayers army now, but there's certainly ways that Kharadron Overlords have to win the game.
I think that's part of the main discussion later is how now knowing all this the knowledge we give you. Okay, what are your tactics? How do you approach this? But basically that's the Battlesmith. He mostly always comes with the Nocildian icon. So it means they mostly always take a battalion to get a second artifact because they need to take one from the lodge. and that's the one they choose because it's their only or almost only way to interact with spells. Because they don't have wizards, they cannot unbind unless they take a specific artifact on their priests. But they don't get any buffs to unbind on this spell. So it's the best choice because it's just everyone gets it and it's a 4+.
And with the current meta as it is, then it's a solid pick for them, isn't it?
Yeah, because you're not going to unbind a Croak or unbind a Nagash, but a 4+ is a 4+. It always works.
Mm-hmm.
How often do Fyreslayers take Knight Incantors with to do some unbinding on or endless spells for them?
I've seen lists. I've seen it being used mostly for the Void Skull, just an automatic unbind. And if they want to use cogs to be faster, sorry,
I can see them. I can see Fyreslayers using cogs a couple times. Then you get +4 to move, and possibly +4 to charge.
Yeah, the important thing about this artifact is you can roll. So if you because if it wasn't you can roll, if it was just you rolled, then that would affect cogs. But because it's optional, so that if they do take cogs, then they don't have to roll if they have this artifact. Which makes it even better.
I've seen a lot of competitive Fyreslayers lists taking gun haulers as allies because now they obviously got cheaper at the winter FAQ, but it basically just is a little bit of CYA, cover your ass, for their slow movement, right? So because it's effectively table wide movement, and so and also adds a little bit of shooting. And so they're able to get on when you think, oh, this back objective, I can move off of it or I can fly high off of it. Well, they've got a gun hauler that can essentially.
Yeah. So allies is a bit, the allies for Fyreslayers, because this is an older book, is Dispossessed, where they were still their own thing. Ironworld Arsenal, so a dwarf.
Yeah.
Cities, Kharadron Overlords or Stormcast. But the things they offer, Dispossessed offer range or melee, but they have that in Auric's and Hearthguard. Arsenal offers them gyrocopters, which is maybe a good choice, and KO offer them fast movement. So that's and more shooting. So often gun haulers is a good choice, or then you go with Stormcast, your prime, your Incantor, whatever.
I was going to say, it's not just because it's an old book that they have it as Dispossessed and stuff, because it's the same with KO. Is we have Dispossessed as an ally, even though it's part of the Cities of Sigmar, but it's because
it's dwarfs. Yeah,
they don't want to take an elves. The key word.
Although Ironworld Arsenal gives you Hellfire Cannon.
It would be pretty funny if you were playing a KO army against a Fyreslayer army and you were Beric Thring. It would be like that Spider-Man meme where they're both pointing at each other.
Yeah, although we can take more Fyreslayers and dwarfs than they can take, because they only have allies. They don't have a sub-faction that mixes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next hero we picked.
Yes, this is also a hero that you'll very often see.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's circle the most important thing about him, probably.
The
magmatic tunneling. So he's another, small hero, 5 wounds, 5+ save, so not awesome. He's actually not that good in combat. He has an option. He can either have a runic iron, so a second combat weapon, or a forge key, and 99%, 100% of the time you use the forge key because it increases his buff, which is the second ability he has. But the main reason is, there's 2 reasons. One is because he gives them his attacks in a battalion. Not attacks. He's a key unit in a battalion when they run double battalion, which is a good battalion. And the other reason is his tunneling, because we said they're slow, 4-inch move dwarves. But this is a deep strike. This is basically a workaround that. How do I get all my Hearthguards onto that objective? Well, easy. I tunnel them with this guy. So he has the ability, instead of setting him up, you can say he's in reserve. He's on the ground tunneling. And then the next time you set up. So this is important. This does not reduce your drop. This is still 2 drops. Next time you want to set up a unit, you can say, well, this unit will join him. And this is any kind of Fyreslayer unit. This could be a Magma Dwarf. This could be another hero. This could be Auric Hearthguards. This could be Hearthguard Bezerkers, Volkites, whatever. They also go in reserve, which is a good way around if you have a high drop list, because this is already 2 dead drops. He's saying, okay, for my first drop, he's going in reserve. Second drop, these 2 are going in reserve. And they don't have that rule that Nighthaunt or Stormcast have, that you always need to put 1 in reserve for 1 unit on board. He doesn't have that. You just put everything in reserve. You have another Prime, I'll put him in reserve too. I've already have 3 drops and you don't have no idea where I am on the board.
So technically, could you run a Fyreslayer list that is entirely off the board?
Probably.
You could, yes. If you have Volkites as battalion and enough Runesmiters, you can get 6 Runesmiters because you're limited by leaders. With 6 big units of Volkites, you could technically. Not sure if you could. But you could.
I would love to see this guy. I just have this crazy vision of this guy tunneling with a Magma Droth, and the Magma Droth tries to fit in the tunnel like Santa Claus.
Yeah. So basically, you can use him. He's also a good, if you plan to take Fyreslayers as allies in KO, I'd always choose him because of the inherent extra, like, good positioning, movement, and another unit.
Yeah,
so you don't have to worry where to put, how to get them your units in combat. You just, okay, I have more of my boats, I can teleport, and he can. It's once per game when he shows up. Importantly, he needs to do this within the first 3 rounds. If he comes up not before the after the start of the 4th battle round, then their units are destroyed. That's like a classic reserve unit thingy. So yeah, he's great. He's 120 points, so it's a good investment to get bodies that are hard to shift onto objectives.
Yeah,
you already mentioned these. Go ahead, Lee. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, if you're coming up against Fyreslayers and you look at your opponent's list, this would be one of the first things I look for, because that's going to really affect your deployment. Because if he's in the list, then you know that potentially something can tunnel up anywhere.
You need to start screening with Arcanauts.
You need to know. You can't just go, well, I can look at their movement and go, well, this is how far they can get.
Yeah. So if he goes with Aurics, remember they have 18-inch shooting range. So he needs, as always, deep strike more than 9 inches away, so they can be in shooting range. The fire steel throwing axes will not, because they're only 8 inches, but they're rubbish anyway. Often people tunnel a Hearthguard Bezerker unit with him, because he's already then a hero that will give them their extra save, their 4+ Fear No Pain. But what I would not suggest to do is to use him to deep strike and alpha strike Hearthguard Bezerkers, because they don't have any +2 charge from themselves. So they rely on that. What is it? 27% chance. Okay, he's a hero. He can use a command point, re-roll it. But nah.
That's where you take the encounter with the cogs.
Yeah, if you get that spell off. But yeah, he's sitting there.
Effect on the +2 move. You get the +2.
Yeah, but they can't move when they come up. Yeah, that's on a roll of 6. Okay, a roll of 6. I will not plan my list around a roll of 6.
Of course, no.
They will know that before they tunnel up. But
yeah, you'll know before. But most of the times you use him to either bring in some Aurics to do some damage, or you put bodies on objectives where otherwise you'd need 2 turns to run there.
You know, the main thing with this guy is that it just adds to that sort of effect that we talked about, where you look at the 4-inch move, they're dwarfs, but they're deceptively fast. They have ways to get around that 4-inch movement to enhance it. And again, we'll see that again more later on, but it's just like KO. You see, 4-inch move on their war scroll, but they are deceptively fast. And I think we're well used to that playing Kharadron Overlords, but it also with Fyreslayer brothers too.
So yeah, he's the other thing that makes him very good is his prayer. So the thing is also maybe to keep in mind, maybe you're a bit surprised. Fyreslayer priests, they can throw out a lot of prayers. They can do up to 3 prayers each, because they all have a war scroll prayer, which in this case is the Runic Empowerment, which is on a 3+. So all their prayers are very good on a 3+. One is on a 4+. If they are wholly within 18 inches, or no, within 18 inches of the terrain piece, and another priest has activated that terrain piece at the start of the hero phase, they get +1 on their prayer rolls. So now this procs on a 2+. So on a 2+, and we use the Forge key, so it's an 18-inch range. The unit that he selects gets reroll wound rolls, all wound rolls.
So good.
This makes
so
your Hearthguard Bezerkers now so much better. Again,
if you remember,
already wounding on a 3, rerolling all those.
If you remember that they do stuff with the pole axes on an unmodified 6 on a ruined roll, and now you got 2 bites of that apple to try and get that unmodified 6 as well.
But the thing is also with any weapon, because already you're hitting on freeze, you can use the gold rune for reroll 1s to hit. Okay, freeze rerolling 1s. Then wounding on freeze, rerolling everything, 1 rain, 2 damage. It just makes units so much better.
It's also not failed wound rolls; it's all wound rolls. So if you did want to fish for crits, you could do. If you're going up against a target with a high armor save, you could say they wanted to try to take down a your ironclad, and you popped your reroll all save rolls. Well, then I can use this guy and fish for 6s and do 2 mortal wounds a pop on 6s.
You could, yes. So this guy, it's an ability, 3+, maybe 2+ if he's within range. 18 inches from his, if he placed his terrain piece in the center of his deployment, 18 inches is a big area. On a 2+, it's a very good thing. You can't do anything about it. It's not magic. Then they all get to choose. All the priests get to choose 1 prayer from the lore, and there's 3 very good ones. One obviously is a Prayer of Ash, which gives +1 save. So that's another source of a +1 save, which only happens on a 4+, though. It's the only one that happens on a 4+, but being close to the terrain piece, it's a 3+. So it's okay. It's reliable. There's one called Ember Storm, which I often put on this guy because it allows you to run and charge.
Oh.
Although, remember, the moment that he tunnels up, he shows up on the board, he cannot prayer. It's too late. Hero phase has passed. He can't prayer. So he cannot do this in the round that he shows up. But if they're playing for a double turn, so they bring themselves in position, next round, okay, double turn. Now they can do all these prayers. So they can run and charge. And this is fantastic. Him with some Hearthguard Bezerkers, he can make them run and charge, making them even faster. So we said before, there's another source of high movement. They can run and they can charge.
I conferred with a close friend of mine, Jeremy Vessier, who is one of last year he was the top overall player on the ITC, and he was also the top Fyreslayers player. And he told me that I asked him for a little bit of insight into. He also plays Kharadron Overlords, a little bit of KO insight on, and he said the Auric Runesmiter should be when you're trying to go after the heroes, just shoot the heroes. Just shoot the heroes. He said the Auric Runesmiter should be your top priority, and then the Battlesmith, in his opinion. And he said because it's that run and charge, because of the run and charge ability, where again, it's just something you don't foresee how much ground these guys can cover in various ways. But that run and charge ability with a double turn can be devastating, and you just don't even see it coming. You can't understand. Yeah. You can't. It's just hard to sort of see on the tabletop.
So even if you pop them up 9 inches away, maybe you roll, you try. Okay, I failed the charge. Next round, now I'm going to guarantee this because they're going to move 4, then they're going to run, 100%. And then they're going to charge. So I'm going to get in all the
They might be moving 6 and run and charge.
Yeah.
You might not even need to tunnel him at that point. You just go, right, this is my big blocker, Hearthguard, front of the line. They move 6, they run 6, and then they charge.
And they reroll all their wounds.
All wounds. Yeah. So exactly.
I've seen that play that you have maybe even 2 of those in a list, and they don't tunnel. It's an option. He can look at your army and say, "Oh, I'm going to tunnel," or not. He can decide.
The problem with the run and charge business that they have these aura buffs and the heroes.
Yes, but remember his only aura is the reroll to wound prayer is 18 inches, so he will still be in that range in the next round, and the other one is just be within 10 of the Hearthguard Bezerkers to give them the extra. And if he runs, he'll be within 10. You often find himself then like lost in the middle of the field, just like somewhere, and that it's a bit dangerous for him. But often, yeah.
But then he's also zoning space as well.
Yeah, he is. He is. Maybe completing on the prayer. There's another one that's often used, and that's another prayer called Searing Heat, which is a -1 to hit. It's an 18-inch range, which all priests can choose to have, and he can -1 to hit debuff you with that. Also on a 3+ or 2+ if you're within range of the terrain piece. And then the third prayer they can do, which is not a prayer roll but an invocation roll. This is important because it doesn't get buffed by the terrain piece. Always on a 3+ is their funny spelled invocations, so he can also do that. So in total he can do 3 prayers invocation things, which is great for a small hero.
Just want to pull out something. Ken says Poleaxes proc on a hit roll of 6. I said rune.
Yes, you were talking though about the Orgot rune that gives extra damage on a 6, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I said Poleaxes, but that was the thing I meant because I knew there was something that procced on a wound roll of 6. So yes. Yeah, you're right, Ken. Ken.
I think I got that sort of crossed. But,
there was
the
me,
extra damage, the mortal wounds. But Ken's right.
Yeah. So one thing I mentioned about deployment, with if there's a Runesmiter in your opponent's list, one of the most important things for KO with that is if you want to deploy in the corner, and then quite often what you see is your people put like a token unit on an objective, like you'll put 3 riggers or a gun horde, something cheap, because you've got most of the stuff in a corner, basically in a little castle, is that if they tunnel up something over on one of your objectives that they would never normally have an opportunity to walk to, that could be quite a bit of a problem for you, because then you're like, well, where do I fly high to? Do I fly high over to their side of the table and try and take that, or do I try and take back my objectives? Because they're threatening that, and they're not, 3 riggers are not going to defend themselves. Even if you load out the space, they're not going to defend themselves, are they? So
no, not really. Once Fyreslayers are sitting on objectives, it's a hard battle from there. The best chance we have is battle plans with a lot of objectives, so we can jump around scoring them, and if they run off to the other one, we jump to theirs and back and forth. We play a game of catch.
KO, right?
If you play something, I played in a tournament a Fyreslayer list last year, which was shifting objectives. So 3 objectives in the middle. Like he moved on to 2 of them, and then I tried to kill his heroes, and we'll see later. There's another minus debuff. It didn't manage. He didn't even really engage with me. He just sat there and scored, and because with a Runefather as a general, you can make Hearthguard Bezerkers battle line. Volkites are battle line. You always scored extra, so yeah, after 2 rounds, basically, it's done.
Yeah. So essentially, they can alpha bunker, and if they do that, then the problem with KO is it's whether you can unpick that bunker quick enough to then score more than them,
or bait them off the objective. Like put something juicy. It's like, oh, come to me, get me, destroy me. But by doing so, you're running off the objective.
Yeah, and a smart player probably won't fall for that, unfortunately.
No, he didn't fall for that.
It's worth trying.
It's also about putting ablative units or ablative models in a position where you can use terrain to your advantage and sort of slow them down as much as possible if you can to block off bottlenecks or access to the objectives if you can, and use your body. You're obviously not as durable as the Hearthguard Bezerkers, but if you can use their inherent slow movement characteristic to your advantage in any way that you can. Because late game is where you're going to want to win the game against Fyreslayers with Kharadron Overlords.
Yeah. So a good shout is abilities to half movement or hinder movement. So yeah, we've seen before Warp Lightning Vortex. You can't run. Maybe throw that away from that Nocidian icon on a unit that doesn't have that. Maybe use the Realm Scourge Rupture, which also has house movement. Like on already, it's a big thing. You can block a unit, and they're all on like 4-inch move on a 32mm base. They will take their time to conga line around it and get somewhere. So that's maybe that turn that you score and he doesn't, that wins you the game. So yeah, maybe think about that.
As much as it would suck to block off line of sight, I saw a battle report with Doom and Darkness where it was Fyreslayers against ogres, and he used the Prismatic Palisade to really slow down. Again, not KO, but he used a Prismatic Palisade to slow down the movement. We
can use it. Spell the bottle. Yeah, it's not that expensive, and it's just a big block thing that you can throw into their way.
Just saying that just using that wall spell to block and make them go around it is very, very valuable.
Yeah, I once played against the Nurgle list, and they had the Palisade, and they just used it to completely seal off one route to an objective, because there were then 2 hills on the sides. Mm-hmm. That was just half my army was just taken out of the game because it was on that side of the battlefield. I could not go through there. I have no means of dispelling it, so I had to run all around the other way. Then he could dispel it and have his stupid Nurgle demons just fly through and,
I've done that. As a Nurgle player, I've done that a lot with summoning Feculent Neuromaws. I guess maybe this is a time for another show, but any other faction that can bring on sort of just ablative wounds. It's just whether it's a unit that can summon a Plague Bearers or Bloodletters or really anything that can just in our case, Arcanauts, where you can either in Zilfin, a lot of people are playing, where you can force them to run 10 inches without even spending a command point, and just putting them in the way, slowing them down, forcing them to spend a turn to fight through them. Before you...
Yeah, so roadblocks are a good solution. But there's a downside. We'll see later. They can fight for two screens in one round.
If you're looking to use an endless spell for a roadblock, your best bet is actually, it's not the Palisade, it's the Goblin Scuttletide with the spiders. Yep. That has the longest and largest footprint of all endless spells in the game. Tubman uses that one a lot, actually, for just to block off access to it.
You don't have to teleport before you move it, before you use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need to be in Zilfin to move it, to use it.
It's funny, Matt, that you brought up Doom and Darkness, because Kron, you just did battle with him recently, didn't you, Kron?
Yeah. Really? I don't know. Do we have to mention? Is that just, that doesn't have anything to do with the KO, does it? That's something else.
No, but it's funny that Matt brought it up in relation to using an endless spell to block movement, because I noticed he did that against you. You were playing with your Daughters of Cain, and he was using Zeech, and he had the Taurus. But he did use it to stop units moving on to an objective.
He did, but Morothy just kind of went.
Yeah. So it's...
really didn't do that on purpose to call out Kron.
So maybe another remark to Scuttletide is it needs a terrain piece to proc. They bring their own terrain piece.
Yeah.
They have a forge that you
Spiders
could
come out of the forge.
Spiders come out of the chimney,
But yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways of blocking movement, and I think it's be creative about it. Don't worry too much even about throwing away a unit potentially. But if it stops them moving for a turn and then they don't get to score, and it's a cheap unit, go ahead.
I believe the Scuttletide is also very cheap.
It is 40 or 30, can't remember now.
30.
It went down.
I used the Realm Scourge Rupture in pretty much all of my lists, which is maybe no surprise, but I love the spell, and the fact that you can predictably put it where you want it and know exactly in the direction it's going to go is very handy. Scuttle Tide can come back to bite you, or they can just move it out of the way if they're able to. But any one of those wall spells is going to be very handy against Fyreslayers.
Yeah. And that was the point I wanted to make about the Doom of Darkness video, was he wasn't using a wall spell, he was just using a predatory ender spell, but he was using the fact that it could be moved to his advantage, because normally the wall spells are quite often stationary once you put them there. Unlike, well, Scuttle Tide isn't, but
Scuttle Tide is not.
No. The fact a spell that you can then move is quite useful in blocking movement, because people will think there's a space they can move through and they go, oh wait, no, there isn't anymore. Okay. Let's move on.
Agreed.
To walls.
Talking
about walls.
Right, I'm just going to have to disappear for a second while you talk about this and come right back. But yeah, just carry on about me. I will be back in.
Okay. Yeah, the Runic Fyrewall is one of these invocations. It's, I think, one of the more used ones. What this does is, why it's important for Kharadron Overlords, is because it has the ability to block line of sight. And so that's obviously for shooting, that's a downside. And there's the way this is written, it's a very cheeky way to use it. So you could place a model in front of it and still not be able, you could still not be able to shoot it. Because when we read the ability, Roaring Runefire, it says a model cannot see another model if an imaginary straight line 1 millimeter wide, drawn from the center of its base to the center of the other model's base, passes within 1 inch of this model. So what this means, number one, is you don't determine line of sight, can I see the model or not, because you need to draw the line from middle to middle. So if there's like a bit of it peeking out, you still need to draw the line of sight now from middle to middle, so the middle of your ironclad to the middle of his hero. The other thing that this means is because it needs to pass within 1 inch of this model. So basically, the whole thing is just 1 inch larger on each side, where it blocks line of sight. So it extends out of the model, and if the line passes through that 1 inch extra aura, means all these foot heroes come on a 32 millimeter base. So that's less than 2 inches. Meaning, if you put them right in contact with the wall, in front or behind, that imaginary straight line that you're drawing is passing through 1 inch around this model to reach the center of that base. Meaning, you can place your priest in front of the wall, in base contact with the wall, you will not be able to draw line of sight to it.
It's because of that wording that says passes in 1 inch of the model, which it's just so good because it allows so much play, like you were talking about, Max.
It's horrible. The way this is written is stupid, but that's the way they have not FAQ'd this. This is a very abusive way to use it, in my opinion. But it means, because obviously you need to place this wall, it's the same, approximately the same size as a what's it called, the other walls in the game.
As a Kharadron Overlords player, you cannot fault another faction for looking at a code, every example that you could from something that's rules as written, because technically they are using it the way it is. I'm just kidding, but it doesn't the same way as something like Sylvaneth Wildwoods, where it has to pass 1 inch of the terrain feature. Over the terrain feature, it's within. So that's an important distinction.
Outside. So the wall is the line of sight blocking is much wider than the actual model.
Yeah.
People can stand in front of it and still not you can still not target them. And another nice effect from this is it grants a reroll save rolls of 1, wholly within 12.
Yeah,
so often you see the wall being placed like this between 2 units, so they get that Mystic Shield, basically.
Yeah, essentially. So 3 up, rerolling 1, 4 up.
Exactly. Now we have reached with the spell and the icon, we have reached the Auric, the Hearthguard Bezerkers on a 3-up save. Now they're rerolling 1s, and then they have the 4+. So we're layering. There's another layer you can put on, but it's not very common.
And
so
the hero is invisible.
Yeah, so the hero is invisible. He can wound shrug on a 4+. He has a reroll 1 save. You see why it's getting more and more difficult to kill these heroes.
Now,
Because it's so wide. Yes, we can fly around and target from different angles, but because you need to draw to the center of the model, it's not enough to just like have a little peek at the model behind the building, but it's actual. You need to measure and lay out lines, and it makes it very hard to target.
And this is a prayer, so you can't just dispel it.
But it might go away on its own at the end of the round. So that's often with Fyreslayers. Like you put it in front of your units because you want to protect them, and then you hope that it's going to disappear because you want to move through there, and it doesn't, and you're blocking yourself. Or you want it to stay to protect the heroes, and it disappears. It's a roll of a 4+, a 50-50 chance. Although if a priest is within 6, it's on a 3+, it will stay.
And
So
I
it's
think
more reliable.
I think it's that slight unpredictability that when leading up to this show, I went to the Best Coast Pairings app and was looking at Fyreslayers list from all over the world, as many as I could view, and I really didn't see the Runic Fyrewall in very many lists at competitive GTs. You see them a lot in RTTs or maybe in some sort of Lofnir list where somebody's not playing a super optimized tournament army. But a lot of the ones that are, well, again, as many of the, I had to go pretty far back to see some of the, some competitive GTs, but I didn't see the Runic Fyrewall in too many lists that also appeared to be somebody who is writing an optimized competitive Hearthguard, Fyreslayers list.
Okay, 2 comments on that. I guess West Coast Pairings is more like US based lists, so maybe that meta is a bit different. And
We kind of use it a little bit as well.
you use it too? Okay.
Australia uses it.
Here, apart from the Scandinavian countries and Germany, I think also in the UK, Fyreslayers are not that common. You rarely see them. Maybe because people are put off because all the units look the same. There's not big choice in units actually. So in Scandinavian countries, there's all those Vikings. They like their Fyreslayers. They have a lot of them, and in Germany, I see a lot of them, and they often use the wall. I think with the rise of the Kharadron, like throughout the last year, we'll see them more often because it's a very reliable protection. It's a protection against line of sight spells as well. It doesn't help against Lumineth Sentinels, but fuck those guys. I mean, they just ruin everything. But yeah, it's a thing to keep in mind. The other thing maybe to keep in mind is that's the last ability it has. It says Magmadros can pass across this in the same manner as a model that can fly, which means you can fly over it.
Right.
So it means your ships and your engine riggers, you could charge over this wall. You could also stand on the other side of the wall, and it will not do anything to you. No harm, no burns, nothing. You could, if you have enough range, stand on the other side of the wall and fight through it. That's also possible. It's a bit weird because it means also the wall can be in front of your unit, and the Hearthguard Bezerkers could fight through the wall, attacking you.
There's a side effect of this I just realised, which is I assume you covered at the beginning that if a base is close enough to it and small enough,
yes, that's the thing we did. That you
Sorry,
can stand
I need to head off. Sorry.
All right.
See you later, Ron.
See ya.
Flying high into the clouds.
Yeah, one side effect.
I'll use KO next time.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, you better
You
do.
need to do your best of 3 with Doom and Darkness.
Play a Mornar.
Yeah. Mornar?
Do
Mornar
it.
next? All
Do
right.
it.
It's on.
Bring.
Will bring.
Alex, you need to do Zon, I think.
What do you like better, Max or me?
I'll
in the live chat.
put up.
What do you
He's like,
want to play?
Yeah.
Next time we
Comment under the video. We'll let
I'll
you
put
know.
up a thing in the WhatsApp.
That's a really good idea. Let the fans decide. Let the people vote.
Let the people vote. And what the people want is more daughters.
Well, we've
Defend democracy. It's
yeah.
not a reference to what's happening in the world at all.
No, let's not go into that.
See ya.
See you, Craig.
Okay, but yeah, that's the firewall.
Yeah, I just
That's
wanted,
what it was.
before Crom left, I wanted to mention that if you did stand close to it, you could effectively stop yourself from shooting anything.
Yep, that's true.
Or is it? Does it? Hang on, let me just.
It blocks line of sight from the middle to the middle. So if your middle of your base is within 1 inch, you can't see anything.
Not even wholly within. Just if you are within 1 inch, you.
If the line passes through and the line is drawn from the center of the base to the center.
Yeah, I was just checking it works both ways. Yeah, but it does work both
Yeah,
ways.
it works both ways.
So yeah, don't stand too close to it.
Yeah, it's a bit annoying. I mean, you could fly over it and then shoot, or move away 2 millimeters and then shoot.
Okay. So let's move on.
I
Guys,
think now we
quick,
go to the battalions. Yeah, sorry, Matthew.
just say I'll take a quick bathroom break, but you know what? This is too important.
Oh, you? Okay. Well, it's up to you. It's your bladder.
It's your carpet.
Yeah, you guys can't see what's going on below the floor, right?
No pants. Lockdown. There's no pants. Exactly. So, Lords of the Lodge battalion. This is a fantastic battalion because it has things that you want to take anyway. It has a Rune Fyrewall. It's bold written, so it means the one on foot or on the Magmadroth. A Rune Master, which is a priest that you would like to have. A Battlesmith, which you're going to take for the +1 save, and Hearthguard Bezerkers, obviously we've seen they're great, so you want to take those too. So fantastic. Gives you less drops, gives you an extra command point, and it gives you this fantastic ability, which means this unit of Hearthguard Bezerkers. So this is important, and maybe to note, in War Scroll Builder and the lists often does not say which units are in the battalion. And we said before, often you see Hearthguard Bezerkers with both weapon loadouts in one list. Ask your opponent which one is it that's in the lodge.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Because-
if very same weapon loadout is
Isn't-
how I want to know.
Because it depends. If they're fighting, for example, Archeon, obviously they don't want the 6s to mortal wounds weapons because he makes them reroll 6s. Some say sneaky Dwarden Fyreslayer players, they like choose and change and swap through a tournament, which would be illegal. To maybe just ask beforehand which one is it that's inside, so you know which one is the unit that is in the battalion. Because this fantastic ability, if the unit is the unit from this battalion is wholly within 12 of a hero, so any one of those 3 heroes from the same battalion at the start of the combat phase. This is important. Then after it has fought in that phase for the first time, you can make it fight again. You can pick fight again. So this is important. This is triggered when at the start of the combat phase. Wholly within 12, fantastic. Now I activate them for the first time as normal. They move out, they pile out of the 12-inch bubble. They can still activate again afterwards for a second time. And we will see this then synergize well with a Lodge ability, where basically they can fight twice in a row. They fight once, they fight again, before you doing anything in their turn. So this is a very powerful thing. They have a 4-inch move, and the 3-inch pile-in is a 75% move, basically. So now they get a 150% extra move from this.
Exactly.
And this is why I said also screens be mindful of this, because if they charge in the same turn, they still allowed to pile in also on the second activation, because they only need to charge it. So they can charge your screen, destroy the screen, explode the screen. I'll activate again. Move another 3 inches towards the closest enemy, which will be the thing you put behind your screen to protect them. 2-inch reach on the weapons, maybe okay, now it's only the front row, but still. So you want to be more than 5 inches behind your screen.
I love how their reach on their weapons is half the distance that they can travel on foot.
Yeah, a long,
Like that.
a long
Yeah.
stick. Yeah. So this catches people off guard. For example, I've played against Skaven, so I ran into their Skaven clan rats, exploded those, and I'll activate again. Now I'm into your bell. Boom, bell dead.
And this compounds with something that we'll see later with a popular subfaction, the Hermdar Lodge, for an even more dramatic compounded effect. Everything piles on top of each other, whether it's defensive buffs or offensive synergy. Everything that this army does compounds on top of each other to make like this destructive sandwich, like this 7-layer cake of doom.
So we've seen already the output of Hearthguard Bezerkers is fantastic. Now double it because they get to fight twice.
Jay Wilson, Diablo 3 meme. Then we doubled it.
Exactly. So yeah, scary people with axes.
And as you said, Max, there's everything that you were going to take anyway. Makes up. There's no tax.
Yeah, maybe the Rune Fiver would be debatable, but you'll take him to make them battle line. Yeah,
it's not like you have to take 3 units of Volkites, which you would never want to take, or something like that. It's things you are mostly going to take anyway.
Yeah,
and
Rune Master. Yeah, he's maybe you opt to take Runesmiters instead of Rune Master if you had a choice, but he's a good priest. He has a good ability. He has a weird thing that way he can make a unit -1 to hit, but it's a very weird wording how it works and if it procs or not. And he can set ablaze a terrain piece. He can make it like throw out mortal wounds and turn it into deadly terrain. You get with a volcano's call, he can just erupt a volcano inside a terrain piece, and it's quite funny because it's an 18-inch reach. But if you have a weird placed terrain piece, I had an opponent. I think he had 3 guild riflemen, like 30 of them inside the terrain piece, but it was a huge hill, so I could actually reach the front tip of the hill. I said, okay, I'm gonna volcano's call on a 2+. Yeah, got it. Roll a dice for each model in that unit at the other end of the hill. On the 6, they all take a mortal wound, and I did like 10 mortal wounds just from that.
Anything that procs on a terrain piece can potentially be massive.
Yeah, because the terrain piece can be massive, but remember, KO usually, except deployment, they're not on terrain pieces because we cannot round on the terrain piece. So we also didn't cover the Rune Master in this overview because he's a priest that can pray. That's it.
The 2 main things other than the fact that the ability is really good, but the 2 main things I take away from this battalion is that it's only 1 unit of Hearthguard Bezerkers, which is why I would imagine you mentioned earlier about the fact that people will take double battalion this, because you basically get your heroes in a unit with this.
Yeah, but often you will not double this battalion.
No, yeah.
You will take this and another battalion.
Because it's a relatively small battalion, if you think about it. It's hero heavy.
Yeah.
But it's
3 heroes and the 1 unit. It's the battalion itself costs now 150 points. They raised it to 150, which I think is okay for what it does. It's a good price.
I mean, if you had more than 1 unit of Hearthguard Bezerkers, or if you could have other battle line in this battalion, it would just be insane. But that's the one weakness I think of this battalion is maybe a little bit of a high points cost, but the fact that it only has 1 of your required battle line.
But those points are so well spent. I mean, it's an artifact, so it's an Obsidian icon that you gain from this. Wow, spell ignore, fantastic, 150 points.
And the command point.
And a second activation, and that's, I mean, a second activation through 5 rounds. I gladly spend 150 points for that.
You are going to see Lords of the Lodge in 9 out of 10 competitive.
I'd say so, yes.
Again, I mostly speak from a competitive player standpoint. If I'm not at an event, I'm preparing for an event that I'm going to go to. So a competitive Fyreslayers army, you're going to see 9 out of 10. You're going to see Lords of the Lodge here.
I'd say so, yes.
Yeah, because it's just for all the reasons we've laid out. It's great.
Yeah, it's a great battalion.
Yeah, and it comes back to the Gristlegore thing, which is threat range after charge.
Mhm.
and it's
They're deceptively fast.
It's 8 inches. 8 inches after where they end their charge is massive. And it's funny that just from piling in with this, they move like 1.5 times their normal movement.
Yeah, this is it. Fyreslayers is all about clever movement. So you use this to move onto objectives.
Yeah, because the slower your movement is, the more clever you have to be with movement. And I think KO, in some ways, it's similar because we rely so much on fly high that when we do make our moves, we have to be clever with them as well. So, I mean, there's not much else about this battalion, is there?
No, that's it. Basically, keep in mind it's a second activation.
Yeah. So let's look at one of their sub-factions, which is Hermdar. This is what the most common. This is their Zilfin, basically.
It is arguably the strongest.
Yeah. Which is what I was going for when I said it as their Zilfin, not the fact that they have abilities for sky vessels. But yeah, there's always one in a book, isn't there, that most people will gravitate to as the strongest.
Yes, in the beginning, when the book first came out, a lot of people tended towards another one, which is all about movement buffs. We'll look at later, because as we said, slow people. But then the activation wars started, and this one is king at playing activation wars. So what this does, the abilities, seized by force, it just means wholly within enemy territory or wholly within 12 inches of an objective. Remember, objectives are 12-inch wide. So if you're standing on the objective, but it's a 12-inch radius, so double of the objective, you do not take battle shock tests, which is fantastic. So basically, anywhere they are battle shock immune, just like that. In your half or in your territory or near objectives, and that's where they want to be anyway. They're battle shock immune.
Go ahead, Lee.
I was going to say it's a really strong ability. If you compare that to some of the battle shock abilities we have in KO, which is like reroll battle shocks if you're in enemy territory or something, just to be completely battle shock immune.
Yeah, the thing with the play with the objectives on 12-inch, so that's a 24-inch bubble around an objective, that's where you want to be anyway. So fantastic. The command ability is what makes this subfaction so good. Skull Breakers and Oath Takers. It's the name. The name is just fantastic. Let's be honest. You can use it at the start of the combat phase. This is important. So if it's your opponent's turn, you have to wait with your start of the combat phase stuff when he's done. Pick one friendly Hermdar Volkite or Hearthguard Bezerker unit. We all know which one we're going to pick. Wholly within 12. Again, everything is wholly within 12 of a Hermdar hero. You're wholly within 12 anyway for the buffs and for the Lords of the Lodge battalion ability. That unit fights at the start of the combat phase. And now comes the important part. Before the players pick any other units to fight with in that combat phase. So this happens before you pick, meaning in your turn, I go first, start of combat phase. I use this command ability. I fight. Then it's my turn. Now other units get picked in a normal order. Oh, it's my turn. It's my because I'm playing my turn, so I'm eligible to activate again. Oh wait, I have this Lords of the Lodge battalion. They can fight again. Same unit, fight again. So you activate twice in a row without any interference from the opponent in your turn.
It completely supersedes any other ability.
Most abilities, yes.
Is there
the only way is if a unit has something like always strike first and it's their turn. Then they will do it first before you do it.
Or if they use the command ability from the realm of Hish in their turn.
I'm not familiar with what the wording is exactly, but it has to be because the most recent trumps. So, for example, eels, the eels with the tide thing. Basically, that is triggered at the start of the round, of the third round. You're triggering this start of combat phase, so it's the most recent. You will fight before the eel. even in their turn, but you need to spend a command point for that.
This is where the phrasing for activation wars comes from.
Yeah, because it's a very complicated thing. When does what, and I'm happy that we're kind of moving away from that. But Hermdar is almost the best. They almost always trump this thing.
From a KO perspective, it's not going to come into things much because you're not going to be trying to.
But just keep in mind, like even in your turn, they can say, "Oh, I'm going to activate first and hit you," and then they can activate again, and now they're in range of your ship or whatever.
Or they can charge your ship and activate before you drop the bombs.
Yes.
Or
in their turn.
Yeah,
if you charge a ship, it's your turn.
Yeah, because they said they charge the ship. Yeah.
So no, the bombs go first.
Yeah. Yes. So that's the important thing to know is in your turn, the bombs will go first. In their turn, they'll activate first.
Well, in their turn, you're not.
And if you're playing them,
and
if you're playing them, it's the same. It's also with the once per game, always strike first in your combat phase. So
yeah, it costs an command point, but that's anything they spend command points on because they don't need to put it on reroll once to hit because they have that rune. They don't need to put it on Inspiring Presence because they're Battle Shock immune anyway. That's what they're using their command points for.
You get an extra command point when you take Lords of the Lodge because this synergizes just so well with Lords of the Lodge. So you've already got a bonus one.
So maybe first round nothing happens, so you have that one too. So you're sitting on freeze, and now the tunneling comes in from the Runesmiter. You're gonna tunnel 20 guys on top with the Runesmiter, so with a hero in the middle. On the two objectives, say, okay, come and get me. If you attack me, I'm gonna strike first with this command ability.
So if you're looking at this from a KO perspective, you're like, okay, great. So Lords of the Lodge lets you fight twice. Hermdar lets you fight first. Big deal. I'm not going to be in combat with you. I'm going to be flying high. I'm going to be flying high. I'm going to disengage. I'm going to stay, so far away from you and shoot. But you look at the command trait for Hermdar, and you're like, oh crap. This is where it's going to hurt the most from a KO perspective, in my opinion. Obviously, Skullbreakers and Oath Takers is great, but this is where it's going to hurt. Warrior and Dominant.
Yeah, because they're likely -1 to hit from Lookout Sir. Now they're -1 to wound,
and that hurts.
Well, yes. So if you want to target the heroes, they're going to be -2. But even if you're like, okay, I'm going to be a crazy guy and go after the Hearthguard Bezerkers, they're also -1 to wound as well.
Everything in that bubble, 12-inch, and you see this army moves in bubbles, or in one main bubble, and then some side people doing their business. And this is now we said before the hero you want to kill. Okay, he's either hiding behind a wall. He's +1 save from the icon. He's rerolling once to save from the wall. Now he's -1 to hit from the Lookout Sir because there's Aurics nearby. He's -1 to wound because either he's the general or he's in range of the general. And then on the 4+, half of the damage gets thrown to the Aurics.
Yeah.
And now those 5 wounds foot heroes are very tanky.
And if you think
very hard to shift.
If you want
-2 is such a good debuff because there's a lot of hitting buffs, but there's very few wounding buffs in the game generally.
And
so this is fantastic. And it works for shooting and combat both.
I'll shoot the Auric Hearthguard first. Well, they're -1 to wound as well. Now.
Yeah, and they're probably also +1 safe, so they're on a 4+.
Yeah.
But yeah, So when facing Hermdar, my main go-to or target priority would be Aurics. When they're less than 3 Aurics, maybe start shooting the hero, because then it's only 4 wounds left, and they don't give Lookout Sir anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then heroes.
Chipping away at them.
And the general is the one to kill first, because that -1 to wound has such a big effect on all of you shooting. So if you can pick him out first, great.
Max, is that generally going to... So if you were playing sort of a Hermdar Lords of the Lodge list with lots of Hearthguards, which is a typical,
army build that you're going to see it. Is the Runesmiter or the Battlesmith typically going to be the general?
The Rune Fyrewall from the battalion, because he makes Hearthguard battle line.
Well, there you go.
He's the general.
And that can, as you said, that can be also one on a Magmadroth. Is that something that would typically be on a Magmadroth?
You could do it on Magmadroth, because then Magmadroth has a much bigger base. So now this aura is much bigger.
And moves faster, right?
It moves faster, but yeah, now he has 14 wounds instead of 6. Or 7 wounds or what he has.
There you go.
Now he has 14 wounds. He doesn't get the Auric wound shrug because he's on a Magmadroth. He doesn't get that. But he can have a Magmadroth trait, which is like engine works for Magmadroths. He can have ignore one rend. He gets the save buffs anyway. So yes, both is effective to do on Magmadroth or not. The problem, I think, is the price you pay for the Magmadroth. It's not as good in combat as you expect a big fire-breathing dragon to be.
There's trade-offs there, right?
So it's a bit. I mean, they're cool. They're good against hordes because they have they do more mortal wounds the more people are in the unit they attack. But I don't know if they're that good. At least not in Hermdar. In Lofnir, maybe yes, if you buff them correctly. But the main reason would be to have more wounds on the hero to make him a bit more survivable, and the bigger base set for buffs. And then maybe late game, okay, he has a 12-inch move with the Magmadroth, just run onto an objective. And if there's like a 10 Arcanauts, yeah, maybe between shooting and attacking, a Rune Fyrewall Magmadroth can take out 10 arcs. He should be able to clear those.
So moving on to the artifact of power, which is
the artifact you have to take, you give it to the Rune Fyrewall because he has the better attacks. He can reroll wound rolls. Okay, great. If he targets an enemy hero. So, okay, when he fights a hero, he can do that. In addition, when he fights a hero and the hit roll is a 6, he gets 1 extra mortal wound. So it's a nice artifact. It's nothing broken. You have to take it. But okay, give it to him. Now he can fight. He can fight your grudge-bearing Engine Master.
So to summarize Hermdar, would we say that the reasons Fyreslayers are taking them is for the command trait and the command ability, and then the ability is fair?
Ability is a great bonus.
But it's not necessarily the all-seeing.
No, but it's not just a nice to have. It's a very nice to have.
And then the artifact of power is just like, well, I have to take this.
You take it, it's not bad. Okay.
Tax artifacts go, it's a good one, really.
It is a tax, because if I had the choice, I would not take it and take something else from the generic lists, because there are better ones. But okay.
Some tax artifacts other books have got, it's in the...
Yeah, it's okay.
From a KO point of view, we're saying the command ability probably not that significant, because if we're in combat with them, it's gonna...
You've done something wrong already.
You're already having a bad time if you're in combat with Hermdar Hearthguard Bezerkers, right?
So the worst thing for us is the command trait, and then the battle shock community just makes things...
Makes it harder. You cannot shoot bodies off and hope for a battle shock.
And the other thing about that battle shock community is because it's enemy territory, is if they've got the Runesmiter, then they tunnel him, and then they come up in enemy territory or onto an objective.
Well, that's the thing. If they pop up with a Runesmiter with Hearthguard, then there's just the -1 to hit from Lookout Sir. Yeah, there's no other save to that hero, so he's an easier target, so to say, unless they use it to pop up in the middle and then move the rest up from behind, and then he's in all the auras, which can also be a valid play. And then the second target would be the general for the command trait, but to get to him, probably you have to shoot through some Aurics.
Mm-hmm. So let's look.
Lee, like you were saying, the ability is not just nice to have; it's really, really nice to have. And generally, why you're taking Hermdar is not for the command trait, but for the command ability. But against Kharadron, the command trait is the killer for us, right?
Oh,
but
well, make no mistake. Also, if you're facing a melee army in combat, all your Hearthguards are so much more tanky because now they're also -1 to wound
on things that make you win the game.
Yeah, so it's just that's the thing. The -1 to wound is shooting and melee, and so Hermdar is overall, if you go to a tournament, is a good choice to play.
They're -1 to wound near the things that give you the 4+ shrug, but they're battle shock immune to the things that make you win the game. So no matter where you are, whether you're on the objectives or you're near the source of your insanely durable defensive buffs, you get more defensive buffs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're prickly is the problem. So let's look at an example list.
Yes, so this is a list, I think, first seen by Charles Black, I think is the name, at CanCon 2020. He did very well with this list. It was a bit different because we still had realm artifacts at the time, and the points were a bit different, but basically the main idea is this. So this is a double battalion list, and this is, I think, a very smart take because it gives you free drops. It's a free drop list. A lot of wounds. We see 132 wounds. Keep in mind that 80 of those wounds have a 4+ feel no pain. So you could add another 80 on top of the whole 132. So even if you say, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna shoot through that," that's a lot of shots you need to mow through 200+ wounds. So we have seen Lords of Lodge Battalion. So we have the Runemaster, we have the Runefavor, the Battlesmith, and 1 unit of Hearthguards.
The Prayer of Ash, is that the run and charge
that's
one?
That's the +1 save.
+1 save. What was the name of the run and charge one?
The Ember Storm, which has the Runesmiter, as you called him. We got another one. We found it.
Just he has a chair of runes.
Yeah,
we also have the Runefavor.
Yeah.
Well,
so
no, that's not the one that gives run and charge. That would have been so good if that was the character that gave that.
He can the Runefavor. I think in another the sub-faction he can actually give run and charge. No, no, actually the one on foot. He can add 1 to charge rolls. That's what he can do. With his
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that your Arcanaut Admiral Aethercast Stein? Did you show that off yet? That's amazing. That's so good. I love that.
Is it? I asked Max last time and I've forgotten. Is it a Kaug or Kraug? Korg. That's it. Officially, is the call.
Around the fall in America, there are lots of local. Oh, there's my daughter. There are lots around in the fall time. There are lots of Oktoberfests around the country in America, and I just cringe at the fact, like compared to the great Oktoberfest that there are in Germany.
Yeah, we had to cancel last year's and probably cancel this year's too, but the year after. So back to Fyreslayers. We have so Runemaster, Battlesmith, and Runefavor are all in the Lords of the Lodge with 1 Hearthguard Bezerkers, but the Runefavor is not the general because we have this smart 2nd battalion, the Forge Brethren, which consists of a Runesmiter and 3 units of 5 Auric Hearthguard. Now, it is important that the Runemaster in this case is the general because he makes Auric Hearthguard battleline.
Right.
Fantastic. That's why he's the general. He'll stand in your backfield, like in the middle, in the center, so that he has the command trait. It's no problem that he has it. Then we have as the third drop is then another unit of 20 Hearthguard. So those are your bruises. One will probably deep strike with the Runesmiter. One is from the Lords of the Lodge, so he'll stay close to those heroes for the second pile-in. And then you have the Aurics to protect and shoot from behind. It is important that 5 Aurics, they have 11 shots. So this is 33 shots. This is something that takes people by surprise. Like they face a melee Fyreslayer army, and whoa, there's a lot of shots coming at them now.
Like I said before, they're basically thunderers.
They're thunders, yeah.
Like
So this is 50
thunderers.
thunders. Yep. Then we have also the Firewall. We talked about that. It's 40 points. So yeah, fantastic. We have two priests in the list that can try to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
And what the Forged Brethren battalion does this is quite cheeky, in the enemy hero phase, start of the enemy hero phase. So this is they are doing something in your turn, which is what very few armies can do. Actually,
I think it's important for Fyreslayers as well, because actually a lot of their buffs they have to activate.
Yes. So even if they opt to not go first, this is something you can do. And what it does is at the start of the enemy hero phase, you can pick one friendly unit wholly within 18 inch of any units of Auric Hearthguard from this battalion. If you do so, add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target that unit until the start of your next hero phase. So this is important for 2 reasons. First, it's +1 save in your turn. So you're going first. Fantastic. I'm going to give that unit +1 save already, like from get-go. And if I get double turned, so you're double turning me, or your second hero phase, I'm going to do this again. So now this unit has +2 because I haven't had a hero phase yet. You can stack this. So you can say, I'm going to go first. Now I'm getting double turned. Well, I'm going to make it very hard for you to kill me, plus all the buffs that I put on already in my hero phase, in my first turn. So now you have 20 Hearthguard Bezerkers with possibly a 5+, 4+, 3+, 2+, a 1+ save, rerolling ones, and a 4+ Feel No Pain. Cool, huh? So yeah, it's fantastic. It's personally, I've never looked at this battalion before because Runesmiter and Hearthguard like, wow, what is this? But if you combine it in a way to get your battle line and low drops, you use the Runemaster to make the battle line, and you use the Runesmiter from the battalion. You want him anyway. He's always like an extra drop because he's so good, but he's in no other battalion. Fantastic. And 40 Hearthguard are enough to like control the board and fight for objectives.
I mean, if you come up against 40 Hearthguard, then yeah.
So yeah, it's very clever. It's fantastic. It's doing very well all over the world. People have adapted it, maybe changed it a little bit. It gives you already from the start 2 command points, which you want for the command ability. Mm-hmm. And it gives you the Nosidian icon, which you want, and it gives you an extra artifact. What I think Charles used to have is the brooch, which gave you on a 4. Each time you spent a command point, you could roll on a 4+. You get that command point back. Ether Quartz brooch, I think it was called. Which, of course, in an army where you spend command points, getting them back was fantastic. I've chosen now to give the Salamander Cloak to the Runesmiter, which is a 5+ wound and mortal wound ignore.
Okay.
So, Matt,
and I give it to the Runesmiter and not the Runemaster because it does not stack with the Auric's ability. And because the Runesmiter, he's tunneling somewhere far away, he doesn't have Hearthguard, Auric Hearthguard nearby, so that's a little protection for him.
But he will tunnel with some Hearthguard Bezerkers, and he'll give them a 4+, and then he'll have his own 5+.
I believe it's a 5+. Yeah.
Okay, so
Salamander Cloak. 5+. Because the wording is the same as the ability from the Aurics, it doesn't stack.
Yeah.
So how to tackle this? 3 drops. So already we can outdrop, or we have it's a 50-50 chance if you decide to go first or not. We have a deep strike, so they could possibly pin you in with 20 Hearthguards in your deployment. The 5 Aurics, groups of 5 Aurics, they can zone out the backfield, as we said before, and they can move on to an objective quite easily. Like a deep strike onto one objective, move on to the other, screen out their backfield, and they're scoring. I would. Now we have a lot of Aurics to pick off here. I would, if the Runesmiter is on his own with Hearthguards, because he gives them run in charge. He would be one target to take out. So those 20 Hearthguards that he tunneled somewhere can be ignored maybe for the rest of the game, because it's going to be hard to get them off objectives if they're already on an objective. But that slows them down significantly. And then I'd go the same, take out Aurics and start picking off the other.
The one thing about this list, though, is that the majority of the killing and staying power lasts within the Hearthguard Bezerkers, and you know where they're going to be. They're going to be on the objectives, because that's really the only thing that can reliably hold an objective. So in order to remove them, you have to remove the heroes. And I know it's a little bit of a cliche, like just shoot the heroes, but at this point, you really have to target the heroes with the most impactful buffs. And then if they shrug them off to the Auric Hearthguard, then so be it. But you really have to. It's really just a matter of target priority and order of operations, right?
Yeah.
You have the heroes are giving out the bubbles of buffs, and the Auric Hearthguards are the ones protecting them. So you start at the heroes, and if that trickles down to the Hearthguards, so be it. But if you try to put damage into the Hearthguard Bezerkers, then it's really just wasted output, in my opinion.
Definitely, I agree. So we said before, it depends on the battle plan. If you have Scorched Earth, for example, fantastic. So you can go and pick out and fly around. If your places of arcane power or shifting objectives, you're gonna have a hard time. All battle plans where everything is like in the center, everything's happening in the center, in a big mosh pit in the center. You can just fly around on each side and try to shoot off, but it's gonna be hard. My suggestion would also be like try to isolate the Hearthguards and just ignore them.
So the thing that I always try to think about when I'm setting up in a game, other than trying to get a little bit of insight into my opponent, their personality quirks, and maybe how that might translate to the table, is the fact that there's these 3 intersecting lines. There's the Kharadron Overlords army line, the Fyreslayers or the opposing armies, but then also the battle plan. And in this case, you know what your army can do. Hopefully now you know what Fyreslayers can do. And it really all depends on where both of those interact or intersect with the battle plan, like you said. So wherever that sort of those 3 lines play with each other, obviously if it's a hero-centered mission, then you know what you have to do. If it's a mission that gives bonuses to battle line, like say shifting objectives, like you mentioned, Max, then you know how that's going to interact with your abilities. It really just depends, and it's hard to say, it's difficult to say, but it really is very dependent on the battle plan and being able to take in the information that your opponent is giving you, or that you already know, hopefully, about the enemy's army, its strengths, its weaknesses, but then how that interacts with the battle plan is really key to victory with really playing any Kharadron Overlords force, and being able to sort of take in all that information, chop it up, and then, sort it out is going to be key.
Yeah. So this list, he basically has 2 centers of power projection. He has 2 big units of Hearthguard Bezerkers. So he will be in 2 places. If the battle plan allows you to be in more than 2 places, fantastic. Then you're going to win on those. Like, go where you can win the battle. And KO can do this fantastically. Move your entire army where you can project your power and have an advantage. Because if he's sitting 20 fully buffed Hearthguard Bezerkers on an objective for 2 rounds, okay, they scored him points, but what else did they do? It's a bit of a shame. It's a waste of Hearthguard Bezerkers if you just sit around. You know.
Why slam your head against a Hearthguard Bezerker-shaped brick wall when you can just go to another area where they're not projecting power? Because everything with the Fyreslayers is everything is so concentrated. Everything is so.
Everything is wholly within 12. Everything is in that 24-inch bubble.
So certainly some battle plans are going to lend themselves to that playstyle. Shifting objectives. You know, he's got 2 super concentrated black holes of killiness and tankiness. Well, you either need to be on the other one that he can't be on, or just have to know that you've got an uphill battle, which is perfectly acceptable. But if you're playing on Scorched Earth, where there's 8 objectives at play at all times, then you're going to know that that's equally in your favor. So just understanding the weaknesses that you have and your strengths, and then their weaknesses and their strengths, and then how that intersects with the battle plan. Are there a couple battle plans that you think that this Hermdar list in particular would be maybe not as strong, other than Scorched Earth?
Anything with more than 4 objectives. So also the ones with 4, like Total Conquest or Total Commitment. Those are, you can play them well. The worst thing you can do to Fyreslayers is make their units run into one direction with their small move, and then make them run back. I often had that with, like, I had Volkites in my army list. What they did first 2 runs, they moved forward because they wanted to attack. Shit, something's coming behind, and I moved them back. So 4 turns out of 5, they were just running forward, running backward, not doing nothing. And that's the worst, because that's just a waste of their abilities. And that's what I said about kiting. Like, okay, I'm going to set up here, I'm going to shoot, I'm going to threaten this objective. Okay, they're going to send 1 unit over there. Make sure you're out of threat range, so they maybe hope for a double turn, or like, I'm going to get there now, get it back. You're coming over here with all your force? Okay, I'm going to go to your side of the battle plan. Let's play there. Obviously, you need to try to score at some point. But that's a typical KO problem. We probably score most of our points in the late game, in the last round, when we shot off the enemy or like liberated ourselves from them. Now we're painting a very dark picture. They're so tanky, they're so indestructible. Once the heroes are gone, even Hearthguard Bezerkers, they fall apart. Because now the buffs are gone, the minuses to wound are gone, the wall is gone, the damage prevention roll is gone. Now it's a 5+, 6+, which all our weapons have rend, so it's a 6+6+, 2 wounds. Okay, we can take them.
And Max, exactly what you're saying is something that that I've learned from some of the best, competitive tournament players, is that ability to have sort of a mental toughness, to have a positive mental attitude. I see so many, players that either play KO or play against KO, and they're like, oh, the game is over by turn 2. The game was over by turn 1. I gave up. I conceded, or he conceded. He gave up. And it's so hard to win when you've already given up mentally, even if you haven't conceded on the tabletop. If you're like, well, it's 40 Hearthguard. How do I kill that? I can't kill that. That's impossible. But if you just concentrate your mental energy and and everything into how can I win? What's my path to victory here? And then taking steps to put yourself in a position to maximize that. That's how you're going to win. If you have a defeatist attitude, the internet says that 40 Hearthguard Bezerkers are just unkillable and they kill everything. It's something that's not conducive. If you think, okay, how I'm going to win is I'm going to slowly pick apart the edges of their army until all their super reliable, so they're super dependent on these characters and on these points on the battlefield. If I remove those, then the rest of their army crumbles. You have to say, well, I have to push through to turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. And at that point, it's time management. It's making sure your turns are fast so you can get to turn 4, turn 5, score points. That's how you're going to win. But being able to push through maybe that adversity the first couple turns is where you're going to shine.
Definitely. I completely agree. So I'm not saying it's easy to play against Fyreslayers for all the reasons that we highlighted. It's not impossible. Maybe we have better chances than our armies because we can reach those heroes from a safe distance. We can reach those Aurics. We can try to kill them. It will take some turns, but it just takes a double turn at the opportune time. Boom, you're going through them. You're at the heroes. You're killing the heroes. You're bombing. You're ramming them. Whatever. Okay, now it's Hearthguards. They're gonna hit. Their output is not much reduced without heroes, but now they will. You can start chipping away. You're gonna lose 2, 3, 4 bodies, and then you can start maybe outscoring them on objectives, or just ignoring them and letting them where they are. 4-inch move. They're gonna take 3 turns to get to the other side.
The thing is with KO against Fyreslayers, it's interesting how the two armies are both Duarden. They're both, Duarden based, but they're so diametrically opposed in their strengths and weaknesses. Whereas KO are just so fragile on sort of obviously, the Ironclad has 18 wounds and a 3-up save reroll, but in general, Kharadron Overlords are so fragile and there's so few body count, but the movement is so incredibly, almost infinite, where with Fly High and all these other movements. But Fyreslayers are the opposite. They have such concentrated tankiness, but their movement is so dependent on these small bubbles, as you said, these concentric bubbles. So they're both Duarden based, but they play so differently, and that's great.
Fyreslayers need to really plan ahead where they want to go in this combat. So, which is already, when you see where they deploy, you know where they're going. Because they're not going to deploy in this corner and go to the other side. That's not possible with them. They're going to deploy like in front of the objective they want to head for. It's no secret. They say, I'm going to go there. And if I reach that, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to score it for 5 turns. I'm going there. So either you can block them or delay them, like put a gun horror in front of them. Okay, let them charge the gun horror. Destroy the gun horror. Okay, it just bought you around if you have. Maybe you can spare it. 3 engine riggers, whatever. Roadblocks. Put something behind them. So maybe they think, maybe I should move backwards, like to protect my heroes. Maybe send 1 unit of Hearthguard or Volkites or something to that direction. It's the whole, like, make them go where you not want to go, slow them down, and KO, we all know it is, you need to be very careful where to go and how to apply, because we're very fragile, as you said. Fyreslayers, I want to go there because I need to go there. I can't go anywhere else in this battle. I'm going there, and I want to go through. We head through the wall. I'm going to go there. So yeah, it's possible. Obviously, there's some luck involved, dice rolling involved, turns involved, but
Fyreslayers are a sledgehammer. Kharadron Overlords is scalpel.
Yeah, Fyreslayers are very straightforward, I'd say. No offense, right. I'm a Fyreslayer player myself. I started playing competitively with Fyreslayers. It's a good army to get into the game, to like get the mechanics. Okay, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to fight. It's very forgiving.
Yeah,
you misplaced something. I got charged now. I forgot. Okay, you're going to survive that. You're going to come back from that. When I started playing Kharadron, I was like, wow, everything is so fast in this army. Like, yay, what's happening? Like, I can jump there. I can jump there. Oh, what? I always run 6. Oh, fantastic. 10-inch move with Arcanauts. That's like a dream. So, yeah. But this is coming back to a list, this is you will encounter, if you go to a bigger tournament and there's a couple of Fyreslayer players, this or very similar to this will be one of the lists. Because it's just so good. It's a fantastic list.
Gary Burspel's in the chat, he's saying shoot the characters.
There needs to be like a switch where you could do that sort of like alternating caps lock, lowercase. My snarky internet personality is so much easier.
Gary, what is that picture? Is that some 40k corn?
Yeah, something odd.
I'm disgusted, Gary. You should know it.
Okay. There's 2 centers of power. So if the battle plan has 4 or more centers of power, then you can just kite around scoring the other ones. If there's
Yes.
three centers of power, then you go for the Runesmiter and Hearthguard block with them because you can kill them, and then you can score the 2 centers of power where they score the 1.
Yeah, and because if it's like shifting objectives, the Aurics are battle line. So if you can take those away and keep your battle line, you score an extra point. So maybe that illegalizes the scoring. If you want to have a good example, there's there was a tournament coverage. Was it Sheffield Slaughter? I'm not sure. Where it's Fyreslayers against KO. And it's a battle plan. I don't remember which one it is, but it has 4 objectives. I think it was Total Conquest, maybe, the old version. And you can see the KO player, he lost in the end, I think, against Fyreslayers, but he did it so well about just ignoring one big block. And he just jumped around. The other ones continued to score, not engaging. Fantastic. I think it's on the Honest Wargamers YouTube. If you want to have a look at that. Where they did the coverage, one just search for Kharadron Fyreslayers and they'll probably come up.
The difficult fighting is they can leave potentially 2 of those Auric Hearthguard units zoning space somewhere.
Well, zoning is always a bit difficult because they want to still be within 3 inches of a hero because that's their job, protect the heroes. So that's already... Either you leave the hero behind, but then he's out of buff range, so the heroes need to keep up with the main force. So these need to keep up, but they're always like a buffer from behind. Like this is where Zilfin move would come in very handy. So 9 inches away from the Aurics. Okay, now I can move in closer and shoot my 12-inch guns at the hero, for example.
For example, primarily Mornar, a Fyreslayers matchup just seems like, even though your navigators aren't going to be have moving anything, being able to move your concentrated place of power with your Ironclad, maybe some Thunders inside, or even some Arcanauts inside, but being able to, because Hearthguard Bezerkers get most of their movement from a charge roll, right? They're charging 2d6, so being able to have that, even if they do get to move 4 and run and charge, being able to have their charge roll is fantastic. And then, like I said, I play a lot of my games with the Realm Scourge Rupture, so being able to physically block space, but then also have move. So I think from a Mornar-centric perspective, I would feel confident as long as the rest of my play, army mechanics versus army mechanics, I would feel very good about this game. Zilfin would be probably a harder matchup because you're being able to get the jump on you're not worried about being able to get the jump on Hearthguard Bezerkers. They want you to get as close as you can, right? But so yeah, just some more ramblings from a KO maniac over here.
The point I was trying to make was, if you try and kite around, say there's 4 objectives and they can sit on 2, if they can sit at 1 unit of Auric Hearthguard on a third, then that zones you out of flying high onto it. So if you're saying that you want to kite around and pick up, score the objectives they're not on, because they've got 3 units of those Auric Hearthguard, effectively they only need 1 of them to be with the Hearthguard Bezerkers and the heroes.
Yes.
Ideally, they would probably want to have more because then they've got...
Yes. And again, don't underestimate, there's shooting coming out of those Aurics. Yeah. They're not just like for beauty standing around. They can do some damage.
Ken asked
a good range. So yeah.
Ken asked a great question in the chat. If you're playing Zilfin with Grudge Bearer, who do you grudge in this list?
In this list, probably the Rune Master.
An engine.
He has the trait.
A Zilfin engine master with dirigible suit with a Grudge Bearer, like the most potential damage output against one hero. Who would you go for?
The Rune Master. Because with Grudge Bearer,
doing
double damage, it might even be a good tactic to just pump all the shots into the Rune Master, because then they will double. The damage will double for him. Because if you start shooting your Endermaster into the Hearthguard, which are nearby the Runemaster, he's only gonna do 1 damage. But okay, half of them he's gonna throw off, but that's still then you're killing both with all those shots.
A flat.
Yeah, I'd probably go on the Runemaster because that command trait -1 to 1 is so annoying. It's just so annoying for Kharadron.
I mean,
it's just,
anytime you can just remove a 17% difference effectiveness in whether it's hit or wound, a flat -1 to wound just in this giant bubble is just so effective, right?
And also he is the source of the Prayer of Ash, the +1 save. So that's another reason to get rid of him.
Yeah,
he's standing next to the forge, so he can give out activate it to get prayers, to make prayers better. So he's the army will function without him, but he's a good force multiplier. So if you can reach him and get him, do it. He's one of the 2 who can put out the fireball. So yeah, 2 as well. If you reduce priests, then that firewall is not coming out that often. And yeah, basically the Runemaster and the Runesmiter, those 2. And then maybe go for a Battlesmith next.
Master to get rid of Warrior and Dominant, you have to make sure that you understand that the Runesmiter is going to be there probably with a run and charge.
Yeah, Runesmiter, because when he tunnels up, he has not used the run and charge yet.
Right.
And he has not used the reroll all wounds and anything on those. So yeah, shoot him, but maybe with something that has long range. So like Indian Leaguers with 24-inch or something, because if you go too close, then those 20 Hearthguard, which are tunneled up with him, they're just going to wreck you.
Do you give this army first turn and allow it to get that 4-inch movement closer to the objectives, or do you try to set yourself up, like anticipate, like bank on you getting double turned, but then setting yourself up to minimize the damage that double turn can do to you? What would what if you had the choice? What would you?
If I had the choice, personally, what is there to gain from going first? Okay, you get onto the objectives and score.
I think there's a case to be made if you go first that you can bait them. If you can drop into, say, the corner of their deployment and bait them into moving away from the objectives, because if you wait until they're on the objectives, you won't bait them off, because that's
probably not.
That's another
so going first, you will not. If they're smart, you're not going to reach those heroes. If you're going to reach them, but you're going to be so close, it's dangerous. Remember, they can 6-inch move if they want.
But this is the thing: is you put them in a position where if they move towards you, they're moving away from the objectives.
Yeah, it depends on the deployment, obviously. But if I can, be on the side and pull them away, yeah, sure.
If you can bait them, go first, bait them to move away from the objectives, because
it's difficult. Because if they put all those buffs up,
that's an all.
You need them in the corner, then
that's an all strategy league.
It's a league strategy. It's like someone who hasn't played a game in 2 years. He has like all these super complicated. If you pull them off and then you put a gun over here, you can pull them off.
Their house for like a year and a half, finally gets out to a big event, has a couple of beers, see all of their tournament online friends after a year and a half, and then you're saying, "Oh yeah, turn 1, just go ahead and just put your." After you've been waiting to play Warhammer for a year and a half, you finally put your army in, right in front of a 40 Hearthguard Bezerkers.
Yeah. The thing is, like, put it in the corner. Yeah, as you said, Lee, put the boats in the corner to bait him off. Mm-hmm. Maybe they'll just ignore you anyway and go forward.
If they ignore you anyway, then you've just got a round of shooting where they don't attack you.
Yeah, you got a round of shooting, which is not doing that much damage, which they can probably survive. Remember, if it's your turn, they're giving +1 save to one of their.
And it's all about trying to get to the late game. So if you can do a couple of wounds to their 5-wound heroes, sure, you probably didn't remove their heroes on turn 1, and then you take a couple of more on turn 2, and then maybe you finish them off on turn 3. Turn 4 and 5 is where you're earning your bread and butter against this army.
So another argument against giving away first is with how deep deployments are. Often, if you give them first turn, they will move their Hearthguards, which are basically their screen. They're their screen, their anvil, and their hammer all in one forward. So it makes it. Then probably you won't reach the heroes anymore. Only with like 24-inch guns. So yeah, if you see an opening, if you see like the possibility to take one out or two heroes maybe. Yeah, but then remember, you're going first. You don't know where those 20 Hearthguards and the Smiter are yet.
No, that's
and then boom. Oh, hello, here we are.
I think again, like I'm thinking about this from a lot of the lists that I've been writing lately as a Mornar centric player. Like I'd be really tempted to take first turn if I had the choice, which a lot of my lists or if I was given first turn, which a lot of people are going to be terrified of a Kharadron Overlords first turn. So I feel like maybe this list would be tempted to give me first turn, which would sort of play into my hands and be a sort of a sneaky, underhanded Mornar thing to do, because a lot of the lists I've been writing have either been just a lot of shooty engine riggers where I can deploy way back, but then still reach their heroes no matter how far away they are, because I can move 12, run 6, and then still shoot with 24-inch guns, or with flare pistols and Aether Golds, or if I was given first turn, be able to set up my Realm Scourge Rupture and then focus everything else somewhere else. So again, it all depends on how Games Workshop views what the meaning of instead of means. Can I redeploy, get first turn, fire off an endless spell, and then fly high somewhere else? I don't know. Do you leave an opinion in the comments? So I think just thinking about this from a lot of the lists from a Mornar centric, I would be tempted to take first turn, maybe roll the dice a little bit and see if I can't roll a 6, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah,
catch a Fyreslayer player on their back foot.
If you go first, then you need to be safe that you're not going to get charged or like in their double turn, because if they get to the boats, it's tough.
Yeah,
Once they get to the boats, it's tough.
Yeah. So there's a thing you could do in Zilfin, which you could take first turn, put up the Warp Lightning Vortex, which I know obviously half of it's not going to work because it's an Alcidian icon, and then fly high your ship back somewhere else, but leave some stuff there in somewhere in their battle plan. So it's not like it's big. I think the trick with baiting is it's got to be enough that they think it's worth it, but if they take the bait, that is not so bad for you. Or it's either that, or you leave the ship and you leave all your units are elsewhere scoring points, and then they go for the ships, and then they realize that they've actually moved away from the objectives. Yeah. But it depends on the battle plan, because that's a risky strategy. So that's one you want to do where there's only really 2 objectives, or there's more objectives, but they're only constant. Like something like focal points, there's 5 objectives, but they're all concentrated in one place. So
focal point is a dream scenario for Fyreslayers. Yeah. Just going to sit on 3 or 4 of them and do the thing.
Yeah. So it'd be one where you think, I don't think kiting is going to work, or I can't pick off one of these units and then control 2 of the points. That's when you're going to have to do something risky.
I think I would actually like to play Fyreslayers and focal points, because they're not going to be able to move in a blob. Like if they want to be able to score the maximum number of,
they just need to score 3.
Well,
they can
right.
They just need to sit on the middle one and the 2 back ones. That scores them 4 points.
Yeah, Kharadron get points for Behemoth. So
yeah, you get 3 points for the other 2s with a Behemoth.
Is that a battle line and Behemoth mission and focal points?
No, it's just Behemoth and Monster.
Behemoth and Monster. So I think I would actually like to play, because so they can sit on their back too. But if they want to go for that middle
center one, they're tunnel on the middle one. That's theirs. Boom. No discussion. And then they're gonna sit on the other 2s, string out the other unit, and in the middle is all the heroes. So they have that triangle where you just sit in there. You can score the other twos or jump around, start shooting, but they're scoring 4 points, 4 points, 4 points, 4 points for 3 rounds. You're not going to catch up. It's because everything's in the middle of the battlefield. That's where they love that, because everything's close by, fantastic. Everything's nice and cozy and warm and fiery. They hate the ones where everything's like spread out on that corner and that corner and that corner. The weird diagonal ones where I think it's Total Conquest is the one, which is like weird diagonal. Total Commitment. Total Commitment is one they don't like because the Runesmiter cannot be in reserve. First thing. Then it's like they can cover 2, but they're very far apart, so they cannot buff both blocks. So, okay, then they need to run all across the board, like diagonally, to get to another objective. While it's like everything is strung out, so you can actually pick your fights, which is, I think would be a good one to face them.
I retract my initial point there. No, but I mean, it's in hand. Fyreslayers are so good at what they do that it really comes down to the battle plan and how quickly you can analyze how your army, their army, and the battle plan intersect. Where's the meeting point, right, between those three lines? Where's the z-axis? And then you'll be able to. It really comes down to a processing of information.
Mm-hmm. You work it out and you go, is this in my favor if I do X, Y, or Z? And then if it's not, and then there isn't another thing you can do, it's then when you have to start thinking, right, is there anything risky I can do? Because if there's something you can't do that's safe to win the game, then that's when you've got to start taking risks.
I mean, if there would be a safe solution to just like play this game and win it,
calculated risks, right?
Would be a boring game.
You got to pick your game. You can take a gamble, you can take a risk, but it's got to not only be maybe a necessarily a decent chance of actually paying off, but the payoff has to be worth it, because the Fyreslayers army is so resilient enough to be able to withstand even a slightly negative outcome against them.
Okay, so I think we've talked about this, and we're drawing on to 3 hours now, and we still got Vostarg to talk about and another Hermdar list. So let's look at the next Hermdar list.
Yeah, this is a quick one. This has even more wounds. It's basically a reduced list that we've just seen. This is like a classic Hermdar list. What you would start building it. Okay, I'm gonna take Lords of the Lodge and 40 Hearthguard Bezerkers. I'm gonna take the Rune Fyrewall as battle line. Okay, I need another battle line. 10 Volkites. They're your bread and butter Fyreslayers. I'd like to take the War Picks and Sling Shields because the shields gives them +1 save if they didn't charge, and the War Picks have Brand. That's the whole reason. I'd like to take 5 Aurics just to protect some of the heroes, and then I added the rest of the points that you have available.
Couple of gun
Runesmiter and the heroes from Lords of the Lodge, and the rest of the points is just play around. I opted for Firewall because it's a good invocation for 40 points. And then Gun Haulers to now introduce that super fast teleport movement. But I don't want the Gun Haulers like anywhere close to melee, because that's what my Hearthguards are going to do. So I gave them drill cannons. They can just, for the 2-3 rounds, they're going to sit in the back, take out like small heroes, key heroes in the enemy army. And then the last 2 rounds, they're going to jump around and score me the points.
Mm-hmm. So...
But it's 7 drops, so yeah, that's a
from a perspective. There's less Auric Hearthguard.
Yep.
So it's actually a more possible task to kill them.
It's 7 drops, so you probably outdrop if you're not going the route of like high drop KO lists. The Gun Haulers, I mean, we know what they can do and how much resilient they are. These are Gun Haulers without gold. Mm-hmm. Bear in mind. So that's maybe you're a bit better prepared to fight those. And the rest is just the same as we discussed before. So first target would be the 5 Aurics if you can reach them, because now your heroes here are much more vulnerable. And then the next one would be the Rune Fyrewall with the command trait and the Battlesmith with the +1 save standard.
Depending on the battle plan and how they move things around, would you be tempted to target the gun holders?
Yes, if it's a battle plan with a lot of, because they do the same as you do.
Yes.
So now they gain the same advantage that you have, jumping around, teleporting, and a bit of shooting. Take that away. Okay, now you have the upper hand.
Depending on your KO list as well, they're doing it better because you could potentially only have 2 ships. You could have a gun holder.
Very probable that you only have 2 ships, like an ironclad and a gun holder, maybe.
But you haven't got 50 bodies elsewhere holding objective likely. So
you don't have 80 wounds sitting somewhere else,
so
which
they've
translates to 160 wounds because of the 4+. You don't have.
I think in certain battle plans, there's a case to be made for targeting them early on, just so that they can't go and take your back objectives or something.
Yes, because we don't have enough units to leave back and protect those as well. And with drill cannons, I mean, those are a threat to your heroes' inside ships, because on a 5+, they will do 3 mortals. So if you're lucky, they shoot both drill cannons, 5 and a 6. Okay, 6 mortal wounds on your hero. On your chemist, he's dead.
It's also like a psychological thing of frustrating them, is they want to be fighting with their Hearthguard Bezerkers, and if you're just ignoring them,
deny them fighting. In any case, with Fyreslayers, just deny them fighting in melee, because that's what they came to do. You just say, I'm not playing this game. I brought a gun to this knife fight. I'm just standing back here and shoot.
And with your KO, you want to put a large amount of your force in one place, and if they've got the threat to teleport, that means you have to dissolve that a bit.
Yeah, but it's just 2 models they teleport, so you probably with 3 engine ringers, you're gonna outscore them on an objective. But
it just means.
They also have the extra move that gun hunters have, everything that's on the war scroll they have. So I think it's a great ally for Fyreslayers, gun holders. Or the other option you could do is, instead of that, add 3 engine riggers with long range weapons. So now it's 4 bodies that you can teleport onto an objective.
So I've got a couple of questions. One applies to both this list and the list before, which both have 2 units of 20 Hearthguard. Which unit would you normally put in the battalion?
Usually, I would put the pole axis, just because to get that double swing at the 2 extra mortal wounds on a 6.
Mortal wounds are good against everything, right? For the most part, especially if you can.
So unless you're fighting against Archeon or anything that makes you reroll 6s, pole axis. On the other reason is because broad axis, they can do better on their own. With they're somewhere else fighting with the Runesmiter, usually they can do shit on their own without needing all those extra buffs and rerolls and who knows what, and fighting twice, because with 1 rend and 2 damage they can take out a lot. They probably do mathematically do more damage. And then I buff the ones with immortal wounds to just get that double roll.
On the previous list, I think it's fairly obvious that it would definitely be one of the units of Hearthguard Bezerkers with the Runesmiter. Is it going to be the same case in this list?
Yes, because it's just a mean of movement.
And then, so
the Runesmiter is just there to get the 20s into position.
So what in this list would the Volkite Berserkers normally be doing? Would they be
sitting on an objective, like what 10 Arcanauts do in my list? Did you sit somewhere all day? Or screen?
And I was kind of
run forwards and then run backwards again. That's what they usually do. They run forwards and then run backwards all game. That's what they never get into the fight.
They screening the 20 Hearthguard Bezerkers from the incoming deadly.
No, they're screening the heroes from the back, because the Aurics are in the middle with the heroes, and the Volkites are just a little half screen,
against Kharadron Overlords. They're protecting your corners from a fly high.
Yeah, they're just from deep striking, from summoning, from whatever. They're just in the back.
Maybe they're scoring 2 objectives turn 1 if it's Scorched Earth, 2 or 3 objectives, and just getting those points.
I mean, you could Oops, no, you could not drop them because then you run out of battle line. If you make one of the Hearthguards like 10, you could invest in more Aurics, for example. Also, so there's this list or variants of this list are out there, but this is like a standard.
Yeah.
Maybe cookie cutter lists. So 2 big blocks of fighty people and some other dudes.
It sounds like they're normally just sitting somewhere or screening the back.
Yeah.
Okay, so
they're okay in combat. They will like defend a objective. But okay. All right.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the way you approach this is similar to the last one, except for the biggest Death Star is easier to dissect because there's less Aurics.
Yes.
And there's just the added complication of there's some teleporting.
And they don't have that +1 save in your phase, in your turn.
So, yeah. Matt, anything to add about this version of Hermdar?
The 2 gun haulers with the drill cannons is a little bit of a sort of a wild card. Obviously, we know what they do, but they are so diametrically opposed to what the rest of the army does that it really depends on the player. I feel like how do they see the gun haulers just as a couple of cannons, or do they see in also the battle plan? Because can they just go off and so the gun haulers are a little bit. This list is a little bit more unpredictable in an army that likes predictability and certainty. So I'd almost rather face the low drop super tough Hermdar than have a couple of gun haulers and me not knowing what the hell they're going to do or how the player is going to use them.
Yeah. Which is why I said you might, depending on the battle plan, want to target them quite early on because that takes away that unpredictability.
And if you wanted to, if the player leaves it open, certainly there are multiple ways to remove 1 gun hauler in 1 turn.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move on
to the other lodge which you might encounter, and this is the movement lodge. So this is all about being fast. What you get from the start is +1 to charge. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now your Volkites have +2 and the Hearthguard have a +1. And in your movement phase in the first battle round, you when you say you want to run, it's an automatic 6. So it's like a first round Zilfin.
Zilfin, but with +1 to charge, basically.
Yeah, but just in the first round.
Oh,
so
yeah.
This is all about first run getting there. Then we add the command ability. The command ability is quite good because it's for your Volkites or Hearthguards. So basically the 2 combat units. You add 1 to hit rolls. So now your Hearthguards are hitting on 2s instead of 3s. Fantastic. So again, Holy Weapon 12 has everything in this army. And you cannot use it more than once per phase. So you cannot give like everything +1. Like you cannot use it to give +2, +3, +4 to hit, but it's any Hearthguard and it's an aura buff. So any units wholly within 12 of this hero who uses it gets a +1 to hit. Great. So you could potentially target like 2 or 3 units with this. The command trait is where again being fast comes in. Wholly within 12 of this model at the start of the movement phase, you can run and charge. So now first turn, you're moving 4, potentially 6 with the rune. You're automatically running 6, and you can still charge with a +1.
Yeah.
So they're going places now.
Straight away, this.
Godly.
Like I said, this does exactly sort of. It's charging rather than shooting, but it does sort of what you'd want, like a combined version of Mornar and Zilfin to do. Like you've got the bonus to run and do something else ability in the same.
Yeah, run and shoot. Yeah. And then the artifact is just like better rend on a weapon, and if it's a 6, it's an extra damage. So it's like a nice common artifact, but it's not.
Matt, what were you?
So basically, what I was going to say is that whereas if you take Vostarg, you are sacrificing the double pylon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're
the double pylon comes from the battalion.
I'm sorry. I meant the fight first.
Yes.
So it's what I was trying to say is it's speed for speed, in different senses of the word. So
yes, and it's speed for output.
Right. So whereas in Hermdar, if you take Vostarg, you're not fighting first automatically, but you're covering more ground. So it alpha bunkers so much better because you're not sacrificing tankiness. You're covering more ground. You get onto your objectives, and whereas you're not battle shock immune on your objectives like Hermdar is, you still have that in. Even though Hermdar is battle shock immune on the objectives, Fyreslayers as a whole are not terribly worried about fleeing. So their main weakness is the fact that their movement characteristics is so low, but this gets around that in a much more direct way. Hermdar is double piling in, and a smart player can utilize that to their advantage. Vostarg. I'm sorry. I hate when people say Ziflin. I can't stand it. Like I'll listen to like a podcast talk about KO and they call it Ziflin for 3 hours. So I'm going to try not to call it Vostarg. Gets around their slow movement characteristic in such a direct way where they can. So it really is a little bit more simplistic, but in a way that's going to catch players off guard. If you don't know exactly what it is, if you're like, okay, Fyreslayers, Hearthguard Bezerkers, tankiness, got it. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, they just moved 12 inches in a turn. And I have no idea how that happened. You're going to have a bad thing.
Here in this one, it seems that it's all about like first turn charges because the ability is all about the first turn. So you could potentially cover 13 inches plus 2d6 for an alpha charge, which on most battle plans, which are like 18 to 21 point something apart, they can like get into your lines if you deploy on the front line, which thankfully Kharadron don't tend to do. They just hide in a corner. But the run and charges is always there. So this is just something to keep in mind. It makes them so much faster to react to situations. Oh, we are over there and you're contesting that objective. Oh, wait, let me run and charge over there. And boom, they're much faster now. They're in your face again.
Right.
So I think there's some good potential in this lodge. Yeah.
I didn't necessarily from a KO perspective that you're worried about first turn charges, but I think that that's very nice to have maybe against a player who maybe overestimates their own abilities or underestimates yours. But the fact that you can cover so much ground, like you just said, with a 2d6 charge roll, that's gonna be more than you're a lot of times moving and running anyway. So just having that consistency in that run roll in your movement overall, you have to consider the charge roll as part of your movement for sure.
Yep, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you lose the shooting if you run, but who cares about those fire axes? Like seriously.
Yeah,
so, I mean that's it. It's a good some faction. It's a movement buff. It makes sense.
It takes their biggest weakness and it improves it. So that's
so it doesn't make the strength better, but it like compensates a weakness. Which
they can cover so much more ground rather than when they get there, they're fighting before you even get a chance to react. But the fact that they can just cover so much ground with so many durable, resilient bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at an example Vostarg list.
So this is something I came up with recently when I looked at Vostarg. This is also a 2-drop, and this uses the White Dwarf battalions.
2-drop?
It's a 4-drop. Should be a 4-drop.
Okay, I thought you said 2.
Did you mean 2 battalion?
2 battalion, yes, sorry. 2 battalion, 4-drop. So what we have again, Lords of the Lodge. We talked about that. Self-explanatory by now. We have the Nosedian icon, fantastic. And now we have the Vostarg Warrior Kinband, and this is so much better than the standard Warrior Kinband book battalion, because what this does, it requires you to take a Rune Sun, which is a hero that you usually don't see, because they're not that good. They're good on Magma Drops, but not on foot. And 3 units of Volkites, and I've chosen 20, 10, and 10, and then another 5 Aurics and a Runesmiter just for the tunneling. So now we just have 1 block of 20 Hearthguards, but what the Vostarg Warrior Kinband does, when the Volkites from this battalion are, I think, wholly within 12 of the Rune Sun, they get an additional attack, which is great. So no
+1 attack is always good.
+1 attack, and the Rune Sun has a command ability that gives a aura of +1 to wound. Now we remember in Vostarg we also have a command ability that gives +1 to hit. Ooh, juicy. Now the Hearthguard Bezerkers hits on 2s and wounds on 2s. Makes him even better. You could add then reroll wound rolls from the Runesmiter, and then reroll 1s from the Rune. So yeah, you can make them like 2s, reroll 1s, 2s, reroll everything, -2 rend, 2 damage. So yeah, you can like shoot out, I don't know, like 50, 60 damage if you like play your cards right. So that 1 unit is more than enough. You have more bodies than the other lists because you have like more Volkites. And the Volkites with all these buffs, they're no slouches. They inherently have the as we said before, the Horn of Grimnir. So they have a +1 to charge. Now they have +2 to charge. So it might even be an idea to take those 20 Volkites and tunnel them 9 inch away, and they get a +2 to charge. So now they only require a 7, and they can re-roll it from the hero nearby. So that maybe is a valid tactic. And the other Volkites, 10 Volkites is still good because now they have 3 attacks. Usually they have 2 attacks each. Now they have 3 attacks each with the Rune Sun, re-rolling hits, re-rolling wounds. And not +1 hit, +1 wound, sorry. So now hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, 1 rend, 1 damage. It's almost like Endrin Riggers, just not D3 damage, but 1 damage. So yeah, we have the Aurics to like protect the heroes, roll drops, and they're very fast, these guys. So if you're like 18 to 20 inches away, you can use these two to just run in and pin the opponent in their territory with all these bodies, and they do a lot of damage. I added as a 3rd artifact the Obsidian Glowhelm. That's just each hero phase on a 4+, you get another command point, because this is a command point hungry army to get all those buffs.
Yeah, and they get run and charge, but if you've got an extra command point, then you can automatically run 6.
Yeah, which you would do anyway in the first turn, but then also in the other turns you can also run 6. Yeah. That's why the Runesmiter, he doesn't have the run and charge prayer anymore, because we have that anyway from the command trait. I gave him the Searing Heat, which is a -1 to hit debuff for the enemy. Yeah, it's a fast list. I think the most damage probably comes out of the Volkites with all the extra attacks and buffs. So but you need to keep them. You probably struggle to get more than 2 units in that bubble around the Rune Sun. So you could tunnel 20. The other 2 10s go with the Rune Sun, and the Hearthguard do what they do. Like double activation is still there from Lords of the Lodge. Yeah, solid. It will surprise your opponent how fast you are in his face with this.
So my take on this is it's going to be hard to kill him, but I would almost want to kill the Battlesmith first, because if I've got Warp Lightning Vortex, that's going to shut off your ability to run, so then you can't run and charge.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just whether you can kill him. You probably shoot the Auric Hearthguard first.
Aurics.
Well, this goes back to sage advice to shoot the characters.
It's just choosing the right character first.
Yeah. So I don't think this is an army you will see often in this composition. I just made this to highlight Vostarg, how fast they are, and that there's another source of buffing their output just through the +1 to hit, +1 to wound, rerolling stuff that we've seen before. So these Hearthguards are much more dangerous because they're hitting on 2s, running on 2s with various rerolls.
Well, this is
you can activate the second time.
Surprise if you don't know what it does so much from a KO perspective, because you're going to expect them to be slow.
Oh yeah, they can like if you deploy like 9 or 10 inches away to shoot your 12-inch guns, they'll be in your face, like they pin you down.
So it's important to know what this one does, because if you'll come up against it less, but if you don't know what it does, then it's going to catch you by surprise, and then the problem is going to be then you'll be in combat with Fyreslayers when you don't want to be.
I mean, 20 Volkites with the shields doing mortals, and then possibly with an extra attack. That's 60 attacks with Rend. That might take down an Ironclad.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can take you. It can like catch you off guard. Yep. So this is more Volkites.
So Matt, not Max, Matt. Sorry, have you got any thoughts on this list?
Well, it certainly has a lot more bodies that are very fast and also inherently tanky, even if it's not 40 Hearthguard. So from thinking from a KO perspective, you're going to have a lot harder of a time picking the front or picking the battle of your choice. So that inherently takes away one of the biggest strengths of Kharadron Overlords. I think that the fact that you have fewer Hearthguard Bezerkers, which, I mean, if you only have one unit of 20, that's something maybe of one less headache that you have to deal with, especially if you only have 5 Auric Hearthguards. It's just such a different beast, and it just shows the level of diversity that a Fyreslayers player has when they're picking their list, whether they want to go with really fast, a lot faster and more bodies, or just tougher, more resilient bodies that also tougher heroes. So I think this contrasted with the couple of, especially the first Hermdar list we saw, really highlights the list building diversity, which I think a lot of people just distill Fyreslayers into, 20, 30, 40 naked dwarves running across the table at you. I think a lot of the times the diversity in those naked dwarves running at you is going to catch you off guard, and you really have to know the difference between those units, what they're good at, and how your list and how the battle plan intersect with the strengths of those particular dwarves, for sure. I know it's a little bit generic, and it's really nothing to do with specifically this Vostarg list, but more just sort of honing the point that if you don't know the opponent's army and how that plays against the battle plan, you're already playing on the back foot. Luckily, KO has many tools and many forgiving tactics, but if you aren't prepared, then you certainly will have an uphill battle, especially against a great player who knows their own army so well.
Yeah. So you get so far with knowing your own list, and a lot further if you know your opponent's list. And then once you know both, it's about knowing the battle plan and playing the game. And I think what this series is ultimately going to be about is not so much, right, well, here's the secret tip to how you defeat this one army because they've got a hidden weakness that no one knows about except for us. It's giving you the knowledge so that you already know about KO, so now you know about the list, and then you're going to have to do the rest yourself a little bit based on the battle plan, because we can't go through every battle plan and go, well, if you're playing against this list, do this on this battle plan, and on this battle plan you do another thing, and so on and so on and so on. And then if they move to this, it's a it's hopefully about giving the knowledge.
And with Fyreslayers, they have a limited number of War Scrolls and a limited number of units, so there's only so many combinations. And I think this series was a really great idea, Lee, because it'll give the Kharadron Overlords viewers an insight, and when we go into armies, maybe like Gloomspite Gitz or Cities of Sigmar, or some of the Chaos factions that can take demons, mortals, slaves to darkness. There's like a huge number of War Scrolls they can choose. This series will give Kharadron Overlords a better perspective on some of the War Scrolls and combinations and synergies that they're likely to see at a competitive event, for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we move on to it's basically the summary of playing against Fyreslayers. I mean, these are what the things we put down initially, but we can add to them as well. And in fact, I'll start with one that isn't on here, which is it is on here actually, but it's almost in the wrong way round, which is target buff heroes and Auric Hearthguard. It's actually, in my opinion, better from what we've talked about. It's the opposite way around. It's, if you can, target the Auric Hearthguard, if there's only 1 unit of 5, target them, then target the heroes. If there's like the list, the first one we looked at, where there was 3 units of Auric Hearthguard, then you might have to look at targeting the heroes first, depending where the Hearthguard are, the Aurics are. I
think I would always target the heroes, because it's not as if the Aurics just shrug off the damage. They're still taking the damage.
Yeah.
It's just taking, but the Aurics give them a -1 to hit.
Yeah, so you're doing damage to the Aurics at -1 to hit, whereas if you do damage to the Aurics first and then switch, so if you can get them to below 3 models in the unit and then switch to the heroes, you don't have to kill the unit. Just get them to below 3 models, so they're not given look outside, then you switch to the
That is unit. A really wrinkled brain point. There's something that
I mean, obviously you don't know how many hits you will do beforehand when you start shooting or allocating your attacks, but
it's target priority and shooting order. So don't shoot with your Ironclad and your 20 unit of Thunderers first. Shoot with some of your smaller stuff at the Auric Hearthguard to whittle them down, and then once the -1 to hit is gone, then go in with the big guns.
Hit them with the hammer.
I mean, you never know how to do, but
you'd be surprised how quickly Hearthguard Bezerkers die without heroes. It's just then, yes, there's 20 of them. Yes, there's 2 wounds, so 40 wounds, but it's a 5+6+. With Rend, it's a 6+6+, so they will start falling apart. So yeah, if you can take out the heroes, you have a very good chance of winning.
And if you thought Hearthguard Bezerkers were bad, wait till we talk about Blight Kings.
Oh dear.
So what's some of the other lists we've got on here? Don't engage in close combat.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious. We have seen they will hit you first, even if you charge them. They will hit you hard, and then they will hit you again. So yeah.
At some point, you might reach a point where you have to engage in combat because you need to get onto an objective, and the only way to do it is to charge, or because if you know you're going to end up in combat, at what point would you say you have to just go for it and go, well, it's going to be bad, but I'd rather do it on my terms rather than their terms?
Depends what.
If you have to engage in combat, don't take the Hearthguard block and then move straight onto them. Hit them on the corner, so that limits how many can get into combat.
Yep. Or even better, attack them from both ends. So then they need to but still, 5 Hearthguard, they will do enough damage, because that's 10 attacks already. It depends what you're fighting. Don't be afraid to fight Auric Hearthguard in close combat.
Yeah.
With engine riggers with saws, you should be able to kill them. I mean, anything else in the KO army already is bad in combat. and now you're sending them into someone who is very good in combat. I'm not sure if that's any good idea. Volkites with a Battlesmith nearby giving a +1 save. They're sitting on a 3+ save and 2 wounds. They're also very resilient. So maybe the best option is then to battle ram or bomb, just to take out models, cause casualties through multiple wounds or in phases that are not the combat phase. Would be my. Maybe you have to, but it will 9 out of 10 cases will go bad if you face them in combat. Or you wait if you're facing Hermdar. Maybe make them use their command points, so they don't have a command point when you actually want to charge them with something important, so they can't fight before you.
In general, you don't want to engage them in close combat if you don't have to, right? Like, play to your strengths. And if you have to engage them with shooting, you're going to want to target the buff heroes in the war.
Yeah. Let's fill that gap there. So let's move on. Let's talk about these two together because I think they relate a lot.
Mhm.
So we talked about kiting a little bit, and we talked about battle plans, and I think where they come into the situation is if battle plans will be difficult if there is either a small number of objectives, or even if there's a large number of objectives that are in a small area or just 2 areas.
Mhm.
There's always going to be exceptions like knife to the heart, because actually realistically they probably can't get to your
Yeah, but knife in the heart is you cannot win against Fyreslayers.
But
It's just one is gonna march forward, one is gonna be 9 inches away and start munching through your defenses, and the rest are just sitting on their objective.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, and then by round 3 they have one.
the battle plans with large numbers of objectives, or the objectives are spread out, are going to be easier because that's when kiting works.
Yes.
Because you can just spread out and you can switch from one place to another, and they're just going to keep running to where you were a turn ago.
Yeah, I wonder how good the new ones with 6 objectives, but they're quite close to each other, work. So forcing the hand and
Blade Edge.
Yeah, Blade's Edge. Because then they can often like one unit of 20 can sit on 2 or more objectives at the same time.
Forcing the hand, they're a little bit further apart. The interesting thing about that is the turn order, because if they've got 20 Hearthguard Bezerkers sitting on an objective, and they probably make that one the one that you score extra points on.
Yeah, Blade's Edge would be interesting because you pull away the objective from underneath them.
Yeah.
Taking away their that's an annoying one for Fyreslayers, I guess. Because then they all quit. Everyone pack your stuff, we're moving to the next one. Move to the next one. Oh, it's gone. Okay, let's go to another one.
Yeah.
I think something when you have fewer objectives, and you know that as the lesson learned here, battle plans with few objectives will be tough. That's something that you have to go into knowing that you're going to have to take a few calculated risks. You know that you're going to need a couple, 1 or maybe 2 Hail Mary passes in order to close the gap and sort of gain an upper hand, whereas that having fewer objectives plays to their strength. So knowing that.
Yeah. So is there anything that we haven't got on here that is something we need to take away from Fyreslayers as a lesson?
Maybe.
Don't underestimate whether it's Vostarg or Hermdar. Don't underestimate how much ground they can cover with all. You don't look at that 4-inch move characteristics and be like, okay, cool. They can't move very fast, because when you see they move 4 and then they can run and then potentially charge maybe 1 unit, not the whole army, but 1 unit, and that's 4 inches, and then perhaps 6 inches, 2d6 inches, and then say they get double pile-in. That's another 3 inches. That's another 3 inches. So it may appear to be that they're slow, but when you add up all the chances that they have for movement, you will be surprised on how and where they are, especially if you don't position your screens right. If you have a screen and then a valuable unit behind it, and they blow up your screen or move into it, or if they just blow up your screen and then pile in again, but they have a 2-inch reach and they can reach your juicy unit behind it, you will be very surprised and caught off guard. And then before you know it, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and don't forget the runes they can use each round. Like, okay, +2 inch move, or another rend, or re-rollings. One thing I forgot to mention about the terrain piece is they can activate it to like get extra buffs on their prayers, or they can opt to like shut it down, extinguish the forge, which gives them a board wide reroll ones to save. So the entire army has a mystic shield now, but then they can't use it anymore. But that's something they can do. That's something they might do when I'm gonna move out of range anyway from the forge now, because the fighting is happening in the middle, or it's like last rounds, like, okay, this is like the last fights, I need to win these, I need to stay alive. Boom, everyone gets his mystic shield. Yeah, so I think when you see the list, ask your opponent, okay, what's your threat range? What's your maximum movement? So please tell me run and charge, extra moves, blah, 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 deep striking. Ask them which unit is in the Lords of the Lodge battalion if they have more than one Hearthguard Bezerker unit. Ask them which hero is which, or which models are the heroes and which hero is which, because they are very hard to tell apart.
Yeah, some things are generic advice of threat ranges, and then some things Fyreslayer specific. So you'd be looking at, are they Hermdar, are they Vostarg, or potentially something else like Lofter that we can talk about. Do they have a Runesmiter? Do they have one unit of Hearthguard Bezerkers or two? How many units of Aurics have they got? Like, is it going to be viable for you to take out that unit of, or whittle down that one unit of Auric Hearthguard to then kill the heroes?
I mean, it's 10 wounds on a 5+. It's doable.
You don't even need to kill 10 though, do you? So you just need to kill 3.
I mean, if you want to kill it, it's 10 wounds on a 5+. From the get-go, probably a 4+, because they're somewhere in an aura somehow.
Do they have the Nalcidian icon? Because you probably got Vortex. Look for that.
I also think if you're playing against Fyreslayers on the regular, if it's in your club and you know you're going to be building a list against them, it definitely lends itself to looking toward other endless spells other than Warp Lightning Vortex. I think there's a couple of endless spells out there that offer better utility rather than just pure damage or damage done by mortal wounds, but you're looking for more, spells that can block pathways, slow movement, anything, other than just Warp Lightning.
Although some endless spells that just do damage could be quite useful, because at least then on the heroes you're not -1 to hit, and then if it does go on to the Auric Hearthguard, it's not too bad.
I mean, a great one would also be the Geminids, -1 to hit. Throw that over a unit of
one attack.
Auric.
Yeah,
or probably -1 attack is a better effect. Yeah. If you don't ignore it on a 4+. So yeah, there's a few if you want to go down the road with the spell in a bottle.
If you're playing against
probably go for,
would you drop spell in a bottle and maybe go for something like Phosphorite Bomblets? Because
Phosphorite Bomblets would be a nice one to kill a hero.
Because it's going to get around the Runic Fyrewall's invisibility trick. It's going to just do a load of mortal wounds to the hero. And
but how much is it? 8 inches? You need to be close to that.
It's 6
Zero.
inches.
6 inches. Oh, you
Yeah.
need to get in there. That's your hero gone probably after that. Yeah, bomblets. I'm not sure. Maybe the flare pistol, but also him you need to get within 15 inches. So
Like I said, I was writing up a couple of, this is one of my last points here. I've been playing with 24 engine rigger lists in Mornar with a flare pistol, setting way and then moving up, and no matter where you are on the board, I'm hitting you with 4 sky hooks and 4 volley guns that are re-rolling all hits, and then one of those units is re-rolling all wounds. So being able to take out or concentrate so much damage on one target. I don't care if you split off half of your damage onto the Aurics. I'm going to take out the Aurics and the hero. And then my second unit is going to completely, hit either the Hearthguards or maybe a couple other heroes. So I think that there's a lot of play between the sky ports. If you know that you're playing against Fyreslayers, if you're just going to a general tournament and you're looking for more of an all-comers list, it's certainly going to be battle plan dependent.
yeah, maybe a good shout is engine riggers also with drill cannons, because they don't care about the minuses to hit. And if you have 4, 5, or 6 in your list, among them you'll probably, even if they don't get the 6 for the mortal wounds, but that's free rend, D3 damage, so it's still gonna go through most of those safe buffs anyway. Maybe that's a good chance. You're safe away to shoot them. One thing I forgot to mention, maybe that's of interest, is Volkite Bezerkers. They have a once per game ability that they can fight again after they die in combat. So if you think, okay, maybe Volkites are the lesser evil, I'm gonna engage them in combat. Remember, they can once per game say activate Berserker Fury. If I die, I'll fight again.
Yeah.
Oh, fight.
So I think we've covered pretty much everything we can cover.
I think
we didn't want to go into it, and we've gone on for over 3.5 hours now. So I think we can end the show there. Hopefully, people found this useful and enjoyed it. I certainly know that I know more about Fyreslayers now than I did a week ago.
Yeah.
So
let us know what we got wrong.
If you're a Fyreslayers expert and you watch this, please do feel free to post corrections.
Just in the comment. And maybe a goal for the next episodes of this kind of show would be probably to keep it a bit shorter.
Yes, definitely. We're trying keep future shows of this vein shorter if we do that. But do please let us know in the comments if you liked this format, and if you want us to do more in the future, and also
which armies.
Yeah, which factions or sub factions you want us to talk about. And then hopefully we can do them. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you both Max and Matt and Kron for joining as well. Even if Kron has been playing dirty snake ladies. If you like the show, please hit like and subscribe and hit the bell icon as well, because then you'll get notifications when the shows are happening. But thank you very much for watching.
Bye guys. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.